to search and recovery, sadly. The death toll has now risen to 90 following the recovery of 2 more bodies yesterday, and yet the grim and daunting task of searching for more people who remain unaccounted for continues. At the same time, the humanitarian toll that the disaster has left in its wake is also, being monitored, with residents scrambling for access to even basics such as drinkable water and other basics. So at about 6:45 this morning, we'll be in conversation with Ali Sembley, who is the Gift of the Givers project manager, and he will give us an update on the daunting task of searching for those who remain unaccounted for, while at the same time helping survivors and their communities get back on their feet. So my conversation with Ali Sembley is coming up at about 6:45 this morning. The National Dialogue about the dialogue is what we'll continue to have. The National Dialogue continues to be under the spotlight. The preparatory task team of the National Dialogue estimating that the entire process, staging the entire process and everything involved, all the elements involved, may cost as much as 700 million rand. That has been described as a cost estimate that is about an investment in our democracy. And I think I saw a quote from Nkosinathi Biko that was saying democracy is expensive. So it is an investment in our democracy. That's their perspective. But the mooted cost has ignited a firestorm of criticism from many quarters, particularly from the trade union movement, political parties, academics, as well as civil society. Government frames the dialogue as a critical moment of national reflection and shaping the next chapter of our country's democracy. But detractors argue that it may end up becoming yet another expensive government-backed talk shop in a country that's already burdened by failing services, austerity measures, and deep inequality. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya will be my guest at the top of 7 a.m. and we will unpack all of those issues. And then lastly, let me tell you this, a third batch of SANDF troops have returned from their deployment in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and they arrived back in the country yesterday. 220 of them, SANDF personnel, received at the Bram Fischer Airport in Bloemfontein. And they form part of the overall contingent that we are told numbers more than 2,000 that is expected to keep trickling in back from the country after the mission of SADC was terminated in March this year following those clashes that took place earlier on in the year, in which 14 South African troops died in battles with M23 rebels. My guest at about 6:50 this morning will be Rear Admiral Prince Shabalala, who is the spokesperson of the SANDF, Director of Defence Corporate Communication. Morning brief team, are we all strapped in for the takeoff? And Musa with your hourly and half-hourly news updates. Rob Byrne with your traffic. We have Zaikan at the sports desk, Melissa Buta with the morning brief in brief, and that's coming up shortly. Dowling Lechela will have your money matters covered throughout the morning, as well as More Africa, Sipho Mantula with your Africa update at about 6:50 this morning. You are an integral part of this conversation. It is a dialogue, national dialogue. We've been having it. Give me a call. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes if you send them to 061 410 4107. On social media, we are at SAFM Radio on X. We are SAFM Radio on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, we are live on our YouTube channel, and that is SAFM Radio. So what are we waiting for? Let's get the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief started.
Take a bite full of mystery on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 contestants face off in the Elimination Challenge. It's all about fine dining desserts and finesse, inspired by South Africa's first award-winning halal fine dining restaurant, the Happy Uncles. Who will taste sweet victory? That's the Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Specsavers Audiology, South Africa's largest audiology group, brings you the all-new Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aids. Experience cutting-edge features at a price you can afford. For a limited time only, buy one Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one and get 50% off the second. Visit specsavers.co.za to find your nearest store and ask for Clarity Pro today. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
At 14 minutes after 6, let's get your morning brief session started with Melissa Puta with the morning brief in brief. Melissa, good morning. Let's start with the concerns that are being expressed by the Minister of Social Development, Sisi Sitolashe. Is she saying that there's a pattern that is discernible that we are starting to see of the targeting of elderly people, particularly elderly women?
Morning, Thulasizwe, and welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Yeah.
The Minister of Social Development, Nokuzola Talashe, has highlighted the growing issue of violence against the elderly, particularly in the Eastern Cape Amatola District Municipality, where several brutal attacks and murders have occurred. Victims, often women, are said to be targeted over false witchcraft accusations or exploited for their grant money, sometimes even by family members. Speaking at the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, Tolashe condemned these acts as human rights violations and called on communities to report abuse and actively protect the elderly. She also encouraged the young people to join efforts to combat elder abuse and promote ethical behavior and respect for older persons in the Eastern Cape. More on this in the 7 o'clock hour with the Social Development Department.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's touch base on the waves of returns of South African troops who are coming back from the DRC.
Yes, so, following several glitches, the third group of the SANDF troops deployed to the DRC for peacekeeping mission have returned home on Monday, landing at Bram Fischer Airport in Bloemfontein. This withdrawal follows a ceasefire agreement between the M23 rebels and the DRC military. The over 200 returning members are part of a broader deployment of over 2,000 personnel sent in 2023. After arrival, they will undergo health checks and begin a leave period of up to 2 months. The previous group returned via Waterkloof Air Force Base due to logistical issues, which have since been resolved. And we will unpack more with the SANDF later on in the 6 o'clock hour.
Yeah, that conversation with Rear Admiral Prince Chabalala coming up at about 10 to 7 this morning. Lastly, Melissa, let's touch on this story. Still no word of what has happened to Kamohelo Baukudi despite the arrest of a suspect in Bloemfontein.
The police ministry has deployed maximum resources to locate the 19-year-old Kamohelo Baukudi, who went missing over a week ago in Bloemfontein. He was last seen after two men allegedly posing as police officers stopped his car and took him away under the pretense of taking him to the police station for a drug-related investigation. One suspect has been arrested and will appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. However, the police continue to investigate and appeal to the public that if anyone does have any information, assuring that all efforts also are being made to ensure that the teen is safely brought home or his whereabouts are located, so that the family as well could find comfort and get justice for this crime.
Yeah, the longer a person is missing, the greater the concern grows for that person's welfare. Thank you for that. That's Melissa Puta there with your morning brief in brief for this Tuesday.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
On the weather front, here's how it's looking. I've got two warnings for you that are coming that have come through from the South African Weather Service. The first one is a yellow level 2 warning for damaging waves, and those conditions are expected between Saldanha Bay and Plettenberg Bay, and they're expected to result in difficulty in navigation at sea until Thursday evening, so later on this week. The second warning is a yellow level 1 warning. It is for damaging winds expected between Cape Point and Plettenberg Bay, which can result in difficulty in navigation at sea from the evening into Wednesday afternoon. So the rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine with a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 20. Johannesburg fine 4 to 18. Mbombela fine 11 to 28. Polokwane fine 5 to 19. Mahikeng will be fine 4 to 20. Bloemfontein 5 2 to 20. Kimberley will be fine and windy with a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 21. Uppington fine and windy 7 to 24. Cape Town will be cloudy with isolated rain and showers from the late afternoon 10 to 14. George will be cloudy with a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 15. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy with isolated showers 15 to 18. East London will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy 15 to 19. Durban will be fine with a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 24. Richards Bay fine 12 to 25. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will be fine with a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 23.
We plan for vacations, retirement, and even tonight's dinner. But do we plan for our health? It's how we protect our family's future. So who are you staying healthy for? And how can you protect their future? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that helps you live a healthier, more rewarding life with health checks and extra rewards. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guard Risk Life, a licensed life insurer FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
From city streets to dirt trails, introducing the new Isuzu MU-X. Sleek enough for the city, tough enough for the mountains. With advanced all-terrain drive, 360-degree camera, and upgraded suspension to take on any journey. The new Isuzu MU-X, now including the new Onyx XT. It's an SUV with 4x4 capabilities, ready for anything. Experience the new Isuzu MU-X at your nearest dealership today.
This week on BBC Primetime, watching TV could make you a winner. It's the BBC Primetime Watch and Win competition. Just tune into your BBC Primetime shows, answer a few simple questions on S3's TikTok account, and you could walk away with awesome prizes. From thrilling dramas to jaw-dropping reality shows, the more you watch, the more chances you have to win. Watch, answer, win. Only on BBC Primetime. Airs weeknights 9 to 11 p.m. on S3. Your couch just became the best seat in the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Coming up to 22 minutes after 6. Well, he was expected to suck up much of the political energy and attention, but US President Donald Trump is cutting his participation at the meeting of the G7 nations short to return home and attend to the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran. Leaders of the Group of Seven industrialized nations are gathered in the Canadian Rockies resort town of Kananaskis for this year's G7 summit. President Cyril Ramaphosa is among the leaders invited to the extended version of the meeting known as the G7 Outreach Session. Trump's departure means he will skip meetings which had been planned for him for today with the presidents of Ukraine and Mexico. But whatever was on the agenda of these countries appears likely now to play second fiddle to a confluence of factors from the escalating war between Israel and Iran, the catastrophic situation in Gaza, and the war between Russia and Ukraine. Let's speak to Elizabeth Sideropoulos, who is Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Elizabeth, good morning, and thank you for your time once again. So Trump's early departure, how comparable is it to the last Canadian-hosted G7 meeting that he attended in 2018 when he left for Singapore and later refused to sign up to the communique of the meeting? Of course, at that time, he left to meet with the leader of North Korea. This time around, he says the Mid-East situation warrants his departure.
Yes, well, at one level, certainly it probably does. The current situation does warrant his departure, but it is very similar to the summit in 2018, where he left early, as you said, and instructed also his officials not to agree to the declaration. The Canadians this year have taken the approach that, bearing in mind the difficulty of arriving at consensus among the group, largely because of the position that the Trump administration has taken on many issues, is not to issue a leaders' declaration or a communique, but rather to issue separate short statements on a few issues, a few themes that have been part of the discussions of the various streams, the finance and the Sherpa track, similar to the G20 over the last 6 months. At one level, I think sort of the fact that he's left early may make some of the conversations that are going to happen today a little easier. At another level, of course, the fact that certainly from Ukraine's perspective, the fact that that there won't be a bilateral with President Trump, the same with Mexican President Sheinbaum. The fact that there won't be a bilateral is obviously not a good thing. I think they were hoping to be able to have some face-to-face conversations, not least the Mexican president, who will be meeting him, I think, face-to-face for the first time. But certainly, in terms of the ambiance in the room, it'd probably be a little easier on the issues on the agenda: critical minerals, artificial intelligence, and so on.
It's an interesting feature that you've observed and that you've highlighted, the departure from what I assume was the default, that at the end of the meeting there would be a joint communique that all leaders sign up to, regardless of their differences initially. Yep. Once consensus is reached, this is our stance, this is our communique. So you are saying this time around they are opting for short statements on various issues, and understand those will include the situation in Iran. Does it talk to the effectiveness and cohesiveness of the G7?
It does. I think what has happened over the last couple of years is that the principles upon which all of these groupings, it's not just the G7, just think of the G20, and I think some of the issues that we'll be facing towards the end of the year, whether we will be able to get a joint declaration. It was also interesting to see, for example, in the BRICS, the difficulty around the foreign ministers meeting a few weeks ago. These are all sort of symptoms of a quickly fragmenting world and quickly fragmenting consensus on issues that maybe 5 or 6 or even 10 years ago we thought we would be able to sort of sign off on a document that we weren't necessarily all 100% happy with, but we could agree to the basic principles. So I think this is a very practical, pragmatic response on the part of the Canadians. It basically recognizes that to try to spend time on negotiating a leaders' communique with the chances of the U.S. not signing on it is probably not the best way forward, and that maybe if we can agree to some certain short statements on particular themes, that might be a way forward. Right. It does raise issues about these groupings and whether consensus can continue to be part of the mechanisms of these groupings in the future. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Elizabeth Sideropoulos, who is Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
You're already Chelsea.
What is this? They're playing like it's Premier League Sunday.
It doesn't matter who they are playing against. It really doesn't matter.
No, I like that. Tell me about it. There was no VAR drama. It was sunny. Yet there was very few people on the pitch, though. It was strange to see no crowds, empty seats at the Mercedes-Benz Arena in Atlanta. But nevertheless, Chelsea winning their Club World Cup opener against Los Angeles FC 2-0. It was Pedro Neto that did some of the damage there. So it's wonderful to see him together with Enzo Fernandez impressing. And Boca Juniors and Benfica, they served up a classic 2-2, as well as a red card and a late Otamendi header to level it. And in Philadelphia, Flamengo strutted their stuff with a 2-0 victory over Esperance de Tunis. Closer to home, we'll have some news now from the Chelsea centre-back Levi Colwill saying it was mission accomplished in Atlanta for Chelsea.
The most important thing for us was to get the win, and that's what we've done. We picked and chose our moments where we could attack and where we could keep the ball. It wasn't the perfect performance, but in tournament football, you just need to win. to take the clean sheet. That's the most important thing for us defenders. We've got amazing attackers and they're always going to score goals. So for us defenders and the team, we need to keep clean sheets to win games. And of course, there are chances, and hopefully, next game we can minimise them.
Banyana and CF Monterrey striker Jermaine Soposenwe has officially announced she'll retire from international football after the upcoming 2025 Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. She's currently named in coach Desiree Ellis's prelim 28-player squad for WAFCON. Now, her international career dates over a span of 15 years, having made her senior debut in 2010. She's earned over 100 caps and scored more than 20 international goals. On to cricket, the schedule has been confirmed for the ICC Women's World Cup in India and Sri Lanka, with England starting their campaign against South Africa in Bengaluru, and that's on the 3rd of October. England, then led by Heather Knight, reached the final of the 50-over tournament in 2022, but were beaten by the world-dominating Australia. They will meet again in the group stages of the tournament on the 22nd of October. The tournament will open in Bengaluru on the 30th of September, with India facing Sri Lanka, while Australia's first game is against the T20 World Champions New Zealand on the 1st of October. And finally, tennis action. Dan Evans celebrated the best of his career on grass, beating the world number 13, Francis Tiafoe, in the first round of the HSBC Championship, 7-5, 6-2. We'll serve up more sport. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, 12 people have been killed in a collision between a truck and a bus on the R34 near Vryheid just after midnight. It's alleged the oncoming truck struck the bus along its side, ripping the bus open. The SANDF's Chief Joint Operations Lieutenant General Spiwe Sangweni says concerned soldiers from the Democratic Republic of Congo have come back without their weapons is misplaced, and the family of former late Zambian President Edgar Lungu and the current administration, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, have reportedly reached an agreement over his funeral. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
But a man who lives, eats, breathes and sleeps tennis, Stefan de Kock, the ATP tennis coach, to chat about the action in the second Grand Slam of the year. Swiatek's had a strange tournament because that first set against Rybakina the other day looked as if she was going to get wiped off the court, and she found the strength somehow to come back into that game, and today a straight set win over a very, very good player.
Going back to the Rybakina match, watching that match, I really thought Rybakina is going to thump Iga off the court. It was aggressive. She served really well. She returned well, stepped into the court, didn't give Swiatek, Iga any rhythm whatsoever. But as the match progressed, it actually got slightly sticky there again in the third, where I thought, okay, Rybakina has got a chance here to break back, but she stayed fast and got through that.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Business Update on SAFM.
All right, for that, let's turn to Ndauling Lechela for the first update of the morning. And of course, a big part of what Ndauling will be telling us about emanates from that meeting in Kananaskis in Canada, the meeting of the G7, because a lot of these meetings do take place on the sidelines. So, Ndauling, let's start exactly there then. Tell me about this deal between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer regarding the issue of tariffs.
Morning, Tula. So initially, the two nations agreed on a deal last month, and yesterday on the sidelines of the G7 in Canada, both UK Prime Minister Starmer and President Trump signed off the deal. The deal eliminates tariffs on the UK aerospace sector and reaffirms quotas and tariff rates on the British auto sector. Now, zooming in on that breakdown, in the auto sector, British car makers will have an annual quota of 100,000 cars that can be sent to the US at a reduced 10% tariff rate, lower than the 25% rate faced by other countries. Tariffs in the aerospace industry have been removed. This includes tariffs on aircrafts and components. Meanwhile, there's still some uncertainty in the steel and aluminium sectors. The US will impose a quota on steel and aluminium imports from the UK, exempting them from the 25% tariffs, provided the UK demonstrates secure supply chains chains and responsible production practices. So the US has not decided on the quota as yet. The deal, however, marks a significant milestone in the US-UK trade relationship, with Britain becoming the first country to secure a tariff-lowering deal with the Trump administration.
I don't know, Dowling, does it feel to you like this was
A win.
this was always the plan all along? You know,
Yeah.
go wild. Give us 145% tariffs and everyone else 60, 80% tariffs, and then you know that, you know, you're forcing everyone to the negotiation table and you may end up with a deal that's favorable.
I do think that's the case. And I think we're also starting to see it in market responses as well. There's a new term called taco trade, which essentially means Trump always chickens out. You know what I mean? So he doesn't like it at all, right?
Yeah.
But it does seem like the case, because it does seem like he's backtracking on most of these tariffs.
Yeah. It's either that backtracking or this was always the plan. Who knows? Tell me about OpenAI and this defense contract that they have scored in the US.
So the contract is worth $200 million, and OpenAI has been tasked with developing AI solutions for national security challenges. The one-year contract is the first project under OpenAI's new initiative, OpenAI for Government, which aims to leverage AI to support government operations. Now, OpenAI will work with the Defense Department to identify areas where AI can improve administrative tasks, such as streamlining healthcare services for military members and their families, enhancing program and acquisition data analysis, and supporting proactive cyber defense measures. The contract is part of OpenAI's growing involvement in national security and defense, and follows its partnership with defense technology startup Anduril to deploy advanced AI systems for the national security missions. Now, the group has said that this contract represents a small portion of its revenue, which is expected to exceed $10 billion in annualized sales, but says it's an important move as it does give it access to government agencies, which may lead to further partnerships and collaborations in the sector, in the department.
Lastly, Dowling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
So recapping on what happened last week, we saw a bloodbath in markets following increased tensions in the Middle East. The JSE caught up in it as global sentiment turned sour over gains in the oil market. And with that, the oil share closed 1.7% in the red on Friday, fueled by a 2.7% fall in the Financial 15. Sentiment, however, started improving at the top of the week, with global oil prices pulling back and safe haven appeal slightly reversing. And so we saw some strength coming through on the currency front. The rand sitting at 17.83 to the dollar this morning, from about 18 rand, the 18 rand level on Friday. We also saw a recovery in U.S. markets, closing in the green yesterday. The Nasdaq leading those gains, up 1.5%. Over in Asia, those stocks starting the day mixed, as investors there remained on edge over the tensions playing out between Iran and Israel, especially after U.S. President Trump called for the evacuation of the capital of Iran, Tehran.
All right, thank you for that, Dowling. That's Dowling Lechela with your first update of the morning. And look out for more insights from Dowling in the second hour of the show, just after 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A reminder about the very serious bus crash between Ulundi and Vryheid. If you're driving a truck, I would suggest you consider the N2. It is a longer way to travel, but it's going to be a better route option than some of the local alternatives around the R34 closure. Teams are likely to be processing this scene for some time this morning, so you can factor in the R34 between Ulundi and Vryheid straight through traffic will be restricted. If you're driving a car, a passenger vehicle, probably a good idea just to sit tight and wait until the scene has been cleared and the road has been reopened, because of course it's there's not much in the way of alternatives out that way, and it is quite a long distance to travel to get around it. Just staying in KZN, but coming in off the south coast, been a crash at Amansam Toti near Adams Road. It's a pretty central Toti area. Really big queues coming in from Doonside, Doon this morning. If you're on your way in from Winkelspruit, stuck in traffic, got to get up past that crash scene at Adams Road. Stapleton Road in Pinetown remains closed. probably for another couple of weeks. So the M7 under pressure as motorists divert that way into the central Pinetown area. Joburg R59 queuing up into Michelle Avenue. Looks like an issue just before you get to Reading Interchange on the R59, pushing a queue back through Swat Copies Road. And 12 from Protea Glen, quite heavy, passing Lenasia up towards El Dorado Park. And a crash on the M1 North at Gordon Road this morning, just slowing traffic arriving from Soweto up towards the Randburg area. Cape Town, no gaps on a busy Tuesday for N2 motorists between Khayelitsha and Mowbray Main Road, and the N1 jam packing already from Durban Road, Belleville, all the way through to Sable Road at Century City. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. So, concerning news regarding the ability of many Africans to travel to the United States, the Trump administration considering adding more nations to those countries that are banned, from whom travel is banned to the U.S.?
Refreshing morning, Tulas, and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Tulas, recall that last week we did touch on the travel ban that was imposed on more than 8 African countries, particularly in the Horn of Africa as well as West Africa. Now we see that more than 40 countries now might face this ban, Tulas, and most of the push and the pull factors are around security, issues of papers, unwillingness of some countries to receive the deported nationals. This is what came out to us over the weekend about the Trump administration on dealing with this travel ban of many African countries. Now, this list has added now your countries that are major partners, your Kenya, Angola, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria. Others will be added to us, but it seems they're also been given a window period of 60 days, within which they will address Washington concerns, unless they will face what they call a partial or a full travel ban. This is worrying to us, considering what is happening with the Trump administration and many African countries, and this will also affect ordinary citizens to us, because he might be taking these strict issues around terrorism, anti-Semitic and anti-American activity, but it will definitely haunt Americans also when they have to travel to the African continent.
Yeah, and Sipho, let's talk about what's happening in Uganda. It seems Yoweri Museveni is taking a leaf out of a playbook that we've seen elsewhere. If the law is an obstacle to what you want to do, change the law and make it such that it agrees with what you want to do. What he wants to do in this instance is to be able to try civilians in military courts.
And Tulas has gone through the parliamentary endorsement now yesterday that the parliament in Kampala to agree with him, despite that we had a Supreme Court that says some of those trials might not be fair. The judges might not have competency to exercise judicial functions, but the Parliament of Uganda yesterday amended all those aspects, allowing President Museveni to now have this law where he says it's all about dealing with armed violent criminals, dealing with military political groups that subvert democratic processes and ensure a national security. This is what came from his office yesterday, but we know the long-standing case of Kizza Besigye. It has been the one that has to be transferred to civilian court now to a military court, and that's how you see Yoweri Museveni is now scraping power by all means now using the military courts.
And tell me about the UN and the Food and Agriculture Organization and their concerns about hunger hotspots. What's that about?
It is almost 18 hotspots that they've highlighted, but I think for the purpose of us this morning, it will be to highlight 4 African countries of note. Both North Sudan and South Sudan are affected. Our diaspora area, Haiti, which has been ravaged by gangsters, is also affected. Bamako, Mali, it is also affected. And this is what they are raising, that conflict, it is the push, economic shocks, climate-related hazards. But when you look at the numbers, Sudan since last year, we have seen more than 25 million people who are at risk. When you look at the South Sudan also, we find 7.7 million people who are in crisis. You go to Mali, you find more than 2,600 people are also at risk of starvation by end of August. So they have highlighted all those countries to us, and they are raising the issue that in the next coming 5 months, these are what they call the hunger hotspots. And remember, once you get it from the UN and the World Food Program, they are on the ground to us. They are aware what is happening, but they are all calling for humanitarian aid, investment and aid delivery to those who are affected. I might have left Palestine to last, but there are many countries who are already affected by conflicts, as we see the conflict of Israel and Iran, the conflict of Russia and Ukraine, many conflicts that are also pushing hunger at high levels.
Yeah. Lastly, Sipho, in your historical archives, 17 June 1976. Tell us what happened.
So that's post June 16 of 1976, yesterday. You will understand that today it was already in 1976. Police were all over Soweto. More than 1,500 police were being deployed to patrol the township. But also 300 white students from University of Witwatersrand staged an illegal march today to pledge their solidarity with the student of Soweto. So you can see that 49 years ago, it was not only June 16, post June 16 there were still tensions around the township. Even the new launch TV channel that was established in 1976 was also covering the events of Soweto uprising of 1976. Asante sana Tulas, in the conversation, SAFM observing the Soweto uprising one.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update for this Tuesday.
In times like these, everyone is looking to save wherever they can. But you don't have to be a detective to know that with Outsurance, you could be saving big on your car insurance. Hear it from real Outsurance client Marius.
The great big saving that I've got, 765 Rand, 27% a month on my premium. It's so quick and easy to swap over. I am part of the Outsurance family.
It's a no-brainer. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Saving on car insurance makes you feel like a winner. And the best part is, if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
14 minutes to 7. Today marks a full week since devastating floods hit parts of the Eastern Cape, especially the OR Tambo district, with the epicenter in towns like Mthatha and surrounding villages near the Mthatha Dam. The death toll has now risen to 90 following the recovery of 2 more bodies yesterday. And yet the grim and daunting task of searching for more people who remain unaccounted for continues. At the same time, the humanitarian disaster left in the wake of the floods is also being monitored, with residents scrambling for access to drinkable water and other basics. So let's hear from those at the coalface of this response. I'm joined now by Ali Sambley, who is the project manager at Gift of the Givers. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. How would you describe the current phase of the search and recovery process that is underway? Because my understanding is that you've moved from search and rescue, sadly, and now are in search and recovery mode. All of this happening while the humanitarian situation becomes clearer and clearer with each passing day.
You know, emotions are still very high. Families are following our teams. As soon as our teams hit out in the water in the morning, family members of those who are still missing follow our teams all along the Mthatha River looking for closure. But, you know, they are being encouraged and there are counsellors from the OR Tambo disaster management teams to inform them, you know, so long the search and recovery is carrying on, and they sweep river along the river banks, going out of Mthatha as well. Some family members have accepted that it will be a daunting task. You're looking at the amount of rubble, looking at how far the teams have searched already, that, you know, the family members might not be found. But then, you know, very interesting as well, as we're moving along the river bank, passing through the villages, neighbors, family members are reporting missing ones. And those families have not been registered yet with the South African Police Services. So while our search and rescue teams are moving along, we are encouraging those families to register their missing loved ones, as it makes it difficult for the search and recovery teams to know what they are searching for. And, you know, in terms of getting additional support to support the search and recovery teams. The South African Police Services has brought in an additional helicopter. Our teams are using rubber ducks to go along the Umtata River now, just to stretch and to make it and to save time in bringing closure to these family members.
There's an important aspect that you talk to, Ali, and it can only come, from someone like you at the coalface and really involved, hands-on, boots on the ground. You are saying to us that there's still a large number of people you are encountering as you are doing this search along the banks and along the Mtata River, I imagine, and the areas around Mtata Dam, and encountering people who don't have their missing loved ones already registered, because that's what the police have been urging people to say, come forward, register with us and say that, these are the family members that are still missing. So you're saying there's still a large number of people that you are encountering who are not captured within that system.
Yeah, most definitely. Moving along, it was so surprising yesterday when we moved into an area called Tabo and Beki. 2 days ago, when our team went to recover the 1-year-old baby from the river, while our teams were busy at the bottom of the river, a family member came running down to inform us while our search and rescue team were there. The family members, consisting of 3, was also washed away and showed us where their house was, and the house was completely destroyed. We then asked the family member, because the South African Police Service was with us on the scene. They then informed us they had no electricity. They couldn't charge their phones. Some of them phones got lost. So they didn't have the means to report their missing family members. The day before that, we were in an area as well where a person reported that 5 of the family members are missing. So, and that's when we realized, we cannot come back to hamper the search and recovery units if we are called out back to an area we have swept 3-4 days ago. And not knowing that there was family members reporting missing in that particular town. And we are very grateful to the OR Tambo District Municipality and the previous office who was on the ground and immediately sent out messages that, that people have to be reported, and it's making the task of search and recovery teams very difficult.
Yeah. Lastly, Ali, and this is perhaps not directly linked to the mechanics of the search and rescue, but perhaps a social observation. You do this kind of work in many disaster-hit areas. What are you seeing by way of the fault lines of the developmental challenges, as well as that I suppose are being highlighted by this crisis that already existed?
What was very sad was, when the Minister of Kofta was here, when the other 11 officials were here, even human settlements, it was to see the number of homes built along the floodlines, built along the river banks. Looking at the state of devastation, we expected the numbers of those deceased to be much higher. If you look at the amount, when we were in the air, if you look at the amount of homes that was destroyed, beds, furniture, completely flooding the river, we thought that the death toll would be much higher. But you know what? The main concern was the amount of homes built along the floodlines. And we could hear the frustration of many officials to say that people are not listening to the bylaws, etc. And we are hoping that that this is a very difficult lesson for many. But in terms of the humanitarian crisis is huge. We are working closely on the ground with the National Department and Local Department of Social Development. Our teams have been on the ground since day one. Water, it's a massive challenge at the moment. We must not forget, Butterworth was also as hardly hit as Umtata, although it didn't have a high number of deaths. But in both, we are serving close to 4,000 people daily with hot meals, water, etc. And our teams are on the ground since day one to see to those needs of those who are accommodated in community halls.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Ali Sambley, who is project manager at Gift of the Givers.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Latest information coming in from northern parts of KZN around this fatal bus crash overnight. Stop-go controls at the scene, so you'll be able to move through, but given the high route of truck traffic on that route, it will be slow, and will be slow for some time. The fatality count rising to 12 in that collision scene. All investigators and EMS remaining on the scene as well. Just staying in KZN, it looks like a stationary truck at Cliffdale, pretty heavily backed from Kia Ridge this morning on your way slowly up towards Pietermaritzburg. There's also an earlier crash at Amanzimtoti, which appears to be cleared and has released a backlog of traffic. M7 going into Pinetown's heavy. Stapleton Road remains closed, so backlogs on the M7. This is the main alternative routing around that. And a stationary vehicle to watch out for before Spaghetti Junction, N2 coming southbound. Joburg crash coming out of Benoni into Boksburg. It's on the N12. It is westbound just by Rondebolt Road. That's pushing a heavy queue back through Tom Jones Street. Other side of town, a collision on the M1 North at Gordon Road, so coming from Soweto, that's heavy. And the N1 out of Pretoria this morning, pretty tight between Brockfontein and the New Road exit. Mighty Mopani Highway, Tuesday morning into Pretoria, heavy backlogs from Theo Martins all the way down to Eskia and Pathlele. And the Dustport Tunnel has been a collision there. Southbound traffic on Bremer as you come off the Mopani Highway, heavily backed up trying to get through the tunnel to Transorania. Cape Town, busy on the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha. More queues from Robert Sobukwe through to Mowbray Main. And there's a big backlog this morning on the M3, sitting from just after Constantia all the way up and down Wynberg Hill into Paradise Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
You know, ever since I adopted positive energy-saving behaviors, the National Grid is thanking me. You should also adopt this lifestyle and your pocket will thank you too. Simply switch off non-essential appliances and lights when they're not in use. Reduce your geyser temperature to 60 degrees Celsius. Replace inefficient lights with LED lights. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to help sustain our energy grid and contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
For over 40 years, we've stood with the artists, championing the arts in all their forms. Now we unveil the next chapter, the Standard Bank Art Lab, a new gallery space where bold ideas take center stage. Opening with a celebration of tapestry, because like these woven masterpieces, the arts are woven into who we are. Step inside, let the art move you, grow you. Standard Bank, proud Lead B20 sponsor, authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Call to Lasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, this is the part I had missed the most, just engaging and interacting with you and just getting some of your perspectives, right? And I love how I'm always kept guessing as to which direction you're going to take the conversation each and every morning. So let me start with this one, because I think someone wants to talk about a bus crash, and I suppose it's perhaps a situation, I imagine, a situation that they want to bring to the attention of everyone this morning.
Very good morning to you, Tulazizwe, Sotisignolo in Mafefele Mopopo. It is very, very sad, really sad that we wake up in the news of a mass death due to that terrible accident involving a bus and truck.
Yeah.
We wish speedy recovery to those who are injured, and may the soul of those who are perished rest in eternal peace.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tulas.
No, thank you for that. It is one of those situations that talk to the need for us to, I don't know, at some point really get a hold of what's driving the high carnage on our roads. It's a conversation Forgive me, I do have a bit of a cough. I'm recovering from a bit of a cough. But it's the situation that we tend to focus on during holiday seasons. So we are coming off a long weekend, and usually there's heightened focus on it. But as we always say, these are situations, and the death toll on our roads continues to be high, even in between the holiday season. So it does need our consistent attention and focus. JCK in Musina, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about June 16 this morning?
Hey, Tulas, are you well?
I'm very, very well, my brother. How are you?
I'm well. Tulas, man, I see this exercise of June 16 is a waste of resources and money. How many June 16 did we have since 1994?
Yeah.
And no political will to change the lives of the poor black people in South Africa.
Yeah.
But, you remember what the late Stephen Mboweni said? May his soul rest in peace. When he talks about when you go to what you call retailers, hotels, wherever, China malls, people who are working there, it's illegal immigrants. But no political will to change that.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a waste of time. What is going to happen tomorrow? That thing worries me much.
Yeah.
Political will is lacking in South Africa to create jobs for our youth and ourselves too.
Yeah. All right, JCK.
Yeah, let me rest my case for now.
Thank you for that, JCK. That's JCK in Musina. There, it's part of what statisticians and what do they call them? The people that study the demographers talk about the youth dividend. We are either using our youth dividend or the youth bulge in terms of our population is wasted. And it would seem in the argument that JCK is presenting there that we are not really tapping into what can potentially be a dividend for us, the fact that we have a youthful population. And JCK narrows it down to a lack of political will and tying it up nicely to the struggles of young people around June 16, 1976 and generations subsequent to that for youth emancipation and full participation and integration in our economy. 7 a.m., let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, 12 people killed in a bus crash near Vryheid, and President Ramaphosa to assert calls for de-escalation of conflicts. Good morning. 12 people have been killed in a collision between a truck and a bus on the R34 near Vryheid just after midnight. It's alleged the oncoming truck struck the bus along its side, ripping the bus open. 10 other passengers have been seriously injured. The bus was carrying supporters of a political party that were attending Youth Day celebrations in Durban. Transport and Human Settlement spokesperson Ndabezinhle Sibiya.
The MEC, Sibonso Duma, has just received a report from our highly efficient team from the Road Traffic Inspectorate, informing him about a horrific head-on collision involving a truck and a bus. At this stage, we are establishing facts around the reports that the bus was transporting supporters of a political party. Once more information has been received, we will inform the people of KwaZulu-Natal. The road has been closed to enable emergency services to provide quality care to the surviving passengers.
Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says President Cyril Ramaphosa will continue to assert South Africa's calls for de-escalation in conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere during his deliberations at the G7 in Canada. Ramaphosa will later today engage in the leaders' outreach session focused on energy security, but geopolitical tensions are likely to be addressed on the margins of the forum and in the president's bilateral meetings with a number of leaders. Magwenya says South Africa will continue to play a supporting role in ending conflicts.
For some time now, President Ramaphosa has been quite consistent in calling for the de-escalation of tensions in the Middle East. Part of that call was to ensure that this conflict that we've seen in Gaza does not extend to the rest of the region. And so one of Canada's priorities for this G7 is the strengthening of peace and stability, where we're going to align with the position insofar as calling for a peaceful resolution of all conflicts, Russia and Ukraine, India and Pakistan, Iran and Israel now.
The SANDF's Chief Joint Operations Lieutenant General Spiwe Sangweni says concerns that soldiers from the Democratic Republic of Congo have come back without their weapons is misplaced. General Sangweni says 80% of the SANDF equipment and weapons have already been moved to Tanzania, and the process to bring them back home is likely to take months. He says the weapons were moved when soldiers moved from Goma. The fourth group of soldiers returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC is expected to land at Bram Fisher International Airport in Bloemfontein today.
So there is a process currently underway of equipment being transported from Tanzania, where currently almost 80% have been moved from Goma up to the transit camp in Tanzania. As we indicated previously, that both our equipment is quite big, then they will be taken or moved by sea.
Iranian state media reported fresh explosions in Tehran in the early hours of this morning. It follows warnings from Israel for residents of the northeastern parts of the city to evacuate. Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the military campaign against Iran was changing the Middle East and that Iranians were now seeing the regime was weaker than they had thought. The Israeli military issued 2 warnings of an Iranian attack, but these were soon lifted. And finally, the family of former late Zambian President Edgar Lungu and the current administration, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, have reached an agreement on his funeral. Lungu died in a South African healthcare facility earlier this month. His remains will be repatriated to Lusaka tomorrow. The days of mourning in Zambia have also been extended to the 23rd of June. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
Lungu's family and the Zambian government have been at loggerheads since former President Edgar Lungu died. Now they've reached an agreement that the 6th Zambian president will be repatriated on Wednesday. Zambian Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Department led the talks with the Lungu's family to iron out their differences. His remains will be transported from South Africa to Zambia. On Thursday, Friday and Saturday, members of the public will be allowed to pay their last respects at Mulungushi Conference Center. A state funeral will be held at the same venue on Sunday.
Recapping the top story, 12 people have been killed in a collision between a truck and a bus on the R34 near Vryheid just after midnight. 10 other passengers have been seriously injured. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
With all the recent headlines, it's time for some good news. A 25-year-old man, Tyler, is smiling all the way to the bank. He switched to Outsurance and now saves a whopping 718 Rand a month on the insurance for his 2021 Ford Figo 1.5. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, we'll look at soccer, and it's Mamelodi Sundowns kicking off their FIFA Club World Cup campaign this week against South Korea's Ulsan Hyundai, and that's all happening in Florida. And we'll bring you some rugby news. The Springboks, it's a changing of the guard for the Springboks' famed front row. The details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, KZN. First up, that big fatal bus crash overnight between Ulundi and Vryheid. The road has been reopened, but it is under stop-go controls, and it will be like that for some time this morning. Factor in some delays if you're going along that section of the R34. Down into Durban, a pretty busy Tuesday morning. A stationary vehicle around Key Ridge, so heavy backlogs on your way to Cliffdale, direction Pietermaritzburg. Earlier crash down at the Monzum 30 seems to be cleared. Traffic is starting to move through. Big backlogs further up the N2 between the M7 and Westwood Mall into the road construction area. Pretoria bound, the mighty Mopani Highway sits from Theo Martins down to a busy SKM Pathlele. Crash at the Dustport Tunnel causing southbound delays coming on Bremer. Crash leaving the Benoni area this morning on the N12 at Rondebolt Road, so heavy from Benoni through to Boksburg area, and the N12 passing Lenasia coming in from Protea Glen towards Eldorado Park, still quite slow as well. Cape Town Marine Drive currently sitting from Bayside Mall all the way through to Racecourse Road in the Milnerton area, and no traffic lights on Umurumba and Ratunga Road at Borsmansdam Road. That's going to be busy in that Century City area this morning. And a breakdown on the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha, pushing a queue back to Spine Road. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 7 on this Tuesday. It is great to be in your company. By the way, as I always say, you are a central part of the conversation, so do give me a call on any of the topics that we have covered thus far and the topics we will cover in this hour. The number to dial to engage in that conversation is 086 000 2032. Please send me your WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. Among what we will cover in this hour, we'll focus a little bit on the national dialogue. We are battling a little bit to get a hold of the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya. Hopefully, he comes through just in time for us to take that conversation forward. In particular, we want to focus on the estimate that has been put forward by the National Dialogue's preparatory task team, who are estimating that the entire process, all the engagements that will need to be undertaken across the provinces, in municipalities, different sectors of society engaging in this national dialogue, all of it could have a total bill of some 700 million rand. Now, that's received a lot of criticism, including from quarters such as Labour, political parties such as the EFF, who are even threatening legal action. So hopefully we connect with Vincent Magwenya there to get the thinking and reasoning of the president around this national dialogue, as well as the eminent persons group that the president announced about a week ago. And then shortly after that, at about 20 past 7, or as soon as we can, we'll get to a conversation with National Treasury Advisor Ishmael Momoniat, and we'll be talking about South Africa having ticked all the boxes, having carried out all of the 22 tasks that were central to South Africa being removed from the grey list. So in a way, the grey cloud above us lifting in a way as far as our ability to curb, issues such as money laundering and terrorism financing are concerned. It seems after a couple of years on that grey list, since about February 2023, we've now done all the tasks, undertaken all of those, and now all that we await is a verification by the Financial Action Task Force to confirm that we are compliant. So that's the direction in which we are going. A bit later on, at about 10 to 8, in fact about 20 to 8, we'll be in conversation with Thembi Safagute, focusing on that big story that I believe you and I are watching with a great deal of concern, the situation between Israel and Iran. So that is coming up at about 20 to 8. So what are we waiting for? Let's get the second hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief started.
We all have an enemy.
Not me.
Oh, please. Trust me, you do. Some are vocal about it. I mean, they don't shy away from it. Open hatred. Well, at least they're honest about it. Then you get our Satan. Oh, they will hate you in the shadows. Consult the Magoya of Baloi. Maybe an Nkabi for you here and there. Trash your name until it can't even be recycled. Tune into My Secret Enemy and get a front row seat to some of the most spine-chilling stories in the Hall of Betrayal. My Secret Enemy, Mondays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
This is Tulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
13 minutes after 7. The National Dialogue Preparatory Task Teams estimate that the entire process may cost up to 700 million rand, has ignited a firestorm of criticism from trade unions, political parties, academics and sectors of civil society. While government frames the dialogue as a critical moment of national reflection and shaping the next chapter of our democracy, detractors argue that it risks becoming yet another expensive government-backed talk shop in a country already burdened by failing services, austerity cuts, and deep inequality. The National Dialogue's first major gathering, the National Convention, is scheduled for the 15th of August. So let's connect with the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, who is in Canada for that G7 meeting. And we appreciate you staying up that late for us, Vincent. And good morning to you, South African time. What's the rationale? I suppose let's just backtrack and get you to explain to us what the rationale is for the National Dialogue. What does the president have in mind? How does he envision it and envision it achieving what goals and to make it worth the investment that we are now told may be as high as 700 million rand?
Chila says a good morning and good morning to your listeners, South African time. It's late in the evening here in Canada. And I wish we were talking about the G7, but albeit, let's talk about this issue of the National Dialogue. I think the first point to start with is that this is not the president's initiative. This is an initiative that was conceived by South Africans in their own right and space and thought about how do we revision South Africa and what kind of South Africa we would like to see, and more importantly, build over the next 30 and more years. And so the burden to give it effect and to make it happen then fell on the head of state, both in terms of the constitutional powers that he has, but also the capacity and resources that will be required to fulfill the sort of vision for this national dialogue. So I think it's important that we understand that this is not President Ramaphosa's project. This is South Africa's undertaking to go back to the drawing board and engage and discuss what kind of country we would like to see over the next many years to come. That's number one. Number two, Chila says we don't have a budget at this point in time. What one of my colleagues mentioned in the media briefing was what the foundations have put forward as their thought process with respect to the kind of cost we should expect. Government is yet to formulate a budget that will then go through all the necessary and stipulated budgetary processes before we can come out to the public and say, here's what it's going to cost you. So this debate is a little bit premature and rather unfortunate because it's now clouding a process that all South Africans need to embrace.
But is there an appreciation?
Participate in?
Yeah. Is there an appreciation, Vincent, of the level of concern from many South Africans about expenditure in austerity situation, but also, more importantly, in light of the many other processes that we've undertaken for various reasons over the past few years? One can count the State Capital Commission and the concern that we don't want another expensive talk shop.
Absolutely, Chula says, absolutely. The criticism, the concerns with respect to the current number that's being bandied about, albeit non-existent, is absolutely understood and appreciated. We have fiscal constraints in our country, and those fiscal constraints are impacting all other aspects of life in South Africa, social spending, as well as other critical areas of spending. We absolutely appreciate the concerns and we understand where the concerns are coming from, which is why it's important for us to clarify that there isn't a budget, there isn't a number or a cost that the government is committed to. All we have is what has been communicated as a proposal that the foundations have put forward. Now, the foundations are not going to be the fiscal custodians of this process. Government is going to be the fiscal custodian of the process. And government has not yet engaged in a process of formulating a budget. Government has not engaged in a process to go through that budget in terms of the required sort of processes, statutory and otherwise, to then say confidently, this is what is going to cost taxpayers in order to have this process. So therefore, the debate over 700 million rands is completely misplaced and completely unnecessary. What we should concern ourselves about is how do we participate in this process? How do we make this process meaningful? And how do we utilize this process to once again, as we did pre-1994, define the kind of South Africa that we want to see, that we want to build, that we want to commit to, not only ourselves, but future generations as well.
So to what extent will you be tapping into resources that already exist such that the costs are kept low? So, I mean, examples would include the national broadcaster playing a role, the established structures at local government, infrastructure that's already there, for instance, when you need to have this national convention such that it doesn't incur a high degree of cost?
To a very large extent. So in the process of formulating the budget, you have to look at what exists. What technologies do you have that will allow you to enable as many voices to be expressed as possible, over and above in-person engagements, processes to collect inputs and so on. So to a large extent, you have to look at resources that exist, like the public broadcaster. You also have to look at, is there room for other sources of funding without necessarily compromising the legitimacy of the process? Because the process belongs to the people and it must always belong to the people. So when you're going to have one party coming in saying, I'm going to fund 50% of the process, what does that do? So you have to look at all of those factors before you can say you have a budget formulation.
Vincent, short and sharp for me. I'd be failing if I didn't ask you about the list of eminent persons that was published by the presidency that, you know, generated quite a fair amount of debate. Just tell me about the process and the thinking of the president around those names, because part of the criticism that I heard said the president should have taken an approach where sectors in society were putting forward names such that it is, I don't know, from the ground up, that it is organic rather than names that many people are questioning as to, you know, what role would this person play in driving forward this process?
No, what we want sectors in society to do is to participate in the process, is to bring inputs into the process. For organizations that will be representing certain constituencies or entities or whatever, we want them to participate in the process. We don't want them constrained by the burden of also guiding the process. Therefore, you needed a group of eminent persons that are not going to be constrained by sectorial expectations. You want individuals who can act independently, give their inputs and their thoughts in terms of guiding the process, and then allow the sectors, all sectors, all sections of our society and communities, households, to then participate. How do they participate?
they put forward their submission
right.
with respect to what they envision to be the kind of South Africa that will benefit all,
Vincent? Yeah.
as it is articulated in our Constitution.
All right, I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time once again. That's the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Makwenya.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply. Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
23 minutes after 7. Well, the country has achieved a major milestone in efforts to strengthen financial integrity, with the Financial Action Task Force confirming that South Africa has substantially completed all 22 action items in its grey listing action plan. This progress paves the way for an on-site assessment, which we are told will take place a bit later on in the year, which will be the final step before potential removal from the Financial Action Task Force's grey list. So let's make meaning of it all. I'm joined by Ishmael Momoniat of the National Treasury Advisor. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. What were these items that were outstanding that have now taken us over the line such that we can say 22 out of 22 we have fulfilled the action items to get us off that grey list?
Morning to the Sizwe and your listeners. The two items that were left related to investigations and prosecutions, one for a sustained increase in investigation and prosecutions, one for serious and complex money laundering, and the other for the terror financing.
And what is the content of that? When we say we've now complied, have we been able to demonstrate to FATF that we now have structures, resources dedicated to investigation and prosecution of these complex crimes?
Yes, more than that. Certainly they looked at those factors compared to where we were in 2019. And what they've done is, remember, we were grey listed now for a period of just over two years. And what FATF assessed was during this time, every 4 months they assess whether there was an increasing trend in both investigations and in prosecutions. And these were the two most difficult action items that we had to achieve. And we expected them to be only dealt with towards the end because they weren't just interested in an increase from one reporting cycle to another, in other words, every 4 months. They wanted to see this increase being sustained throughout this period. And I must congratulate, I think, the DPCI, the Hawks, and the National Prosecuting Authority for the hard work that they demonstrated underlying the sustained increase.
So this was through going in terms of the areas of focus. I remember at some point there was a big focus about beneficial ownership and people needing to undertake certain processes in terms of the companies and intellectual property commission, etc. How sustainable are these changes for our own benefit, let alone doing it in order to be compliant with FATF?
Yes, to the Sizwe. I think what you mentioned here, I think for all the items, we must be clear that we're doing it for ourselves, for our country, because it's good for our country. All the FATF process was, in a sense, doing was to recognize that after state capture, our institutions were weakened. And the issues like you highlighted, not just investigations and prosecutions, but the features that help to investigations, for example, like beneficial ownership, that was dealt with at the February plenary when we had 6 outstanding items. So they gave us 4. And your point on sustaining these improvements, FATF will still be doing the on-site visit, as you pointed out. That's the only step left. And what they're going to be checking is that not only have we put this in place to verify that, but that they feel confident that it can be sustained in the future, and that there's a high-level political commitment to support such a sustained increase in the future. So in that sense, I think very good for us as a country. And by the way, to make the challenge even more demanding, we have another mutual evaluation, which is a peer review that FATF does on member countries and other jurisdictions. And that starts next year and will be announced in October 2027. So we certainly can't rest on our laurels. We'll have to continue to demonstrate over the next 2 years that we have maintained the improvement. We don't want to get grey-listed again.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That is Ismail Momoniat, who is National Treasury Advisor.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. Let's kick off with Mamelodi Sundowns. They'll be kicking off their FIFA Club World Cup campaign against the South Korea's Ulsan Hyundai in Florida. The Brazilians from Chlorkop are determined to rewrite the script after their 2016 disappointment, where Asian opponents handed them early exits, with Lucas Ribeiro's last season's PSL top scorer and the assist king, as well as Bafana midfield maestro Teboho Mokoena pulling the strings. Sundowns look sharp. Here's their coach Miguel Cardoso.
We believe that Ulsan and us, if we take a look on the data, there's a lot of similarities in several moments of the game between them and us. It makes us predict a very equal game, a very hard game from both teams in order to establish the moments where they can make the difference on the game, and in order obviously to achieve a positive result for the side.
More soccer. Liam Delap made his debut as Chelsea won their Club World Cup opener against Los Angeles FC 2-0 in front of thousands of empty seats at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Chelsea centre-back Levi Colwill says it was mission accomplished.
The most important thing for us was to get the win, and that's what we've done. We picked and chose our moments where we could attack and where we could keep the ball. It wasn't the perfect performance, but in tournament football you just need to win. To take the clean sheet, that's the most important thing for us defenders. We've got amazing attackers and they're always going to score goals. So for us defenders and the team, we need to keep clean sheets to win games. And of course there are chances, and hopefully, next game we can minimise them.
Rugby, it's a changing of the guard for Springboks' famed front row. Injuries and retirements mean stalwarts like Steven Kitchoff, Frans Malherbe and Trevor Inyakani won't feature this season. In their place, young guns like Asinati Intlabakanya, Neetling Fushier and Boan Venter get their long-awaited shot. And finally, cricket. The Proteas women are primed for a spirited performance in the third and final one-day international against the West Indies at the 3Ws Oval today, as the two teams prepare to battle it out for serious honours with the three-match contested level at 1-1. We'll be back. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, Deputy President Paul Mashatile says Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will have the final say on the budget for the upcoming national dialogue. Mashatile was speaking to the media at the Northwest University Rag Farm Stadium yesterday after delivering the keynote address at the Youth Day celebrations. 12 people have been killed in a crash involving a truck and a bus on the R34 near Vryheid just after midnight. 10 other passengers have been seriously injured. It's alleged the oncoming truck struck the bus along its side, ripping the bus open. And US President Donald Trump has left the G7 in Canada to return to Washington amid rising tensions in the Middle East. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Section of the R34 where that bus crash occurred overnight has been reopened, but under stop-go controls, and it probably will be slow. Backlogs of traffic that have been stuck there overnight during the closure will need to be cleared through. Just staying in KZN, Durban having a pretty busy back to work Tuesday after the long weekend. There's queues on the M13 from Hillcrest coming down Fields Hill into Pinetown. M7's very heavy into Pinetown because of the closure of Stapleton Road. Queuing up between Tweeny Hill and Prosses Beckton on your way north this morning. More queues up the N2 between the M7 and Westwood Mall. More queues after Gateway into a breakdown by the Sabaya exit as well. And then motorists coming in from Verulam. There's quite heavy traffic on the R102 at JG Champion. That's the Palmview junction. It's quite slow as you head from Verulam down towards Phoenix, if you like, on your way to Joburg. On your way to Durban, I beg your pardon. Joburg traffic this morning, N12 is heavy. Coming out of Benoni, a crash on the N12 at Rondebolt Road. Traffic parking all the way back through to Snake Road. Lots of traffic on the Mike 1 from Boyson's right through to Melrose. Crash on Vitkoppen Road between Four Ways and Ravonia. That junction there at Cambridge Road, so the Pulse-Off area very slow. Big traffic on the N14. The Krugersdorp Highway going to sit from the R55 right up to Brockfontein Interchange. And the Dustport Tunnel in Pretoria, very busy, solid both ways today. Cape Town, all just really a lot of congested highways, nothing that really stands out as being unusual, with perhaps the exception of the R300 running north. That's slow to join the N1 outbound for a turn out towards sort of Okavango Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling once again. Ndauling, so the wage negotiations at Transnet, there was an agreement with one of the unions, I think it was Satau, but there was a union that was holding out. You are telling us this morning that that has finally been taken over the line.
That's right, Sula. So the rail and ports operator reaching a wage agreement with the two largest unions, that being Satau and Untu, who had initially didn't sign the deal. Now, the deal includes above inflation increases of 6% each year for 3 years, resulting in an 18% wage increment over the period. The Transnet says, rather, that this agreement ensures labor stability, especially after talks reached a deadlock last month. The SOE further says the deal will allow it to focus on improving operational and financial performance. The deal comes as Transnet continues to struggle with financial challenges, including a reported loss of 2.2 billion rands for the 6 months ending September and a debt of over 100 billion rands. Now, the company has secured government guarantees to support its operations. And just last week, the Department of Transport confirmed that another guarantee will come through to assist with its debt pile as it continues to stabilize operations.
And then tell me about Delta continuing to dump non-core assets in an attempt to decrease its debt.
That's right, Sulas. And this time around, the property company is selling one of its properties in Brom for 25 million rands. This, of course, is part of its strategy to dispose of non-core assets and reduce its debt pile. The buyer, Vivid Yellow Investments, owned by Alan Kirkle, who is a former chief investment officer at Fairvest, another JSE-listed company, has confirmed that the deal is not related to any of his partnerships or involvement in Fairvest, and he had to, of course, unveil that or disclose that according to JSE listing requirements. Zooming in on the details of the deal, it consists of a 2.5 million rand non-refundable deposit already paid and 22.5 million rands secured by guarantees due on transfer. The effective date of the sale is expected to close at the end of October, pending regulatory approvals and transfer of ownership. The sale proceeds will be used to lower Delta's debt burden, aligning with its portfolio optimization strategy. Now, this deal follows the successful sale of Unisa House in Marshall Town to Gooder Properties, with net proceeds, of course, being used to settle outstanding debt.
Interesting moves in that sector, the property sector. Lastly, Ndauling, how are the markets doing at this hour?
So kicking things off in Asia, stocks mixed on that front, with investors eyeing tensions in the Middle East while awaiting monetary policy moves from the Bank of Japan. U.S. traders also awaiting a rates decision with the Fed meeting this week. Economists expecting another pause, but will be keeping an eye on comments around inflation following increased conflict between Iran and Israel, and that, of course, sparked a surge in oil prices. Ahead of the Fed's moves, futures on that front are in the red. Then coming back home, markets closed mostly in negative territory in Friday's session, following global peers, with the all share shedding 1.7%. The rand, however, stabilizing this morning and making a slight recovery at 17.82 to the dollar this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. Look out for one more update from Ntauleng coming through just after 8:30, in which update she will give you a sense of the kind of day you can expect in the markets on this Tuesday.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Rockets want to take full control of 90 minutes. Meanwhile, First Touch ladies want to transition quick with First Touch football. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Do not miss out on glittering action between TS Galaxy Queens and First Touch ladies on Saturday 21 June at 3 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Tulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's coming up at 21 minutes to 8. Quite a fair amount that we've covered this morning that I think is worth reflecting upon. And I do see some of your voice notes starting to come in. A lot of you wanting to talk about the national dialogue and what Vincent Magwenya of the presidency was telling us, that, you know, this whole talk of 700 million rand is premature at this particular point because there isn't a budget that government has committed to. If you missed that conversation, that's what Vincent Magwenya was saying, that what we have at the moment is an estimate by some of the foundations that are involved, and that's simply, that doesn't, you know, strip government of its responsibility to ensure that this is fiscally prudent, that it's managed in a way that is cognizant of the financial difficulties that the country is facing. But absolutely, the commitment continues from the presidency to lead this national dialogue. Vincent Magwenya there describing it as something that is a product of what South Africans want, to be able to pause after 30 years, re-envision the kind of country that we want to have going forward. In fact, I think let me take one voice note that has to do with, one or two that have to do with that issue of the national dialogue.
Hi, good morning to us, Johnson in Bombela. Look, you are asking Magwenya how to keep the cost low. This cost item is unnecessary. Why do we have this national dialogue when we have leaders who've been elected to lead us? Why do we need this? Why are we wasting money as a country? The youth will rise, and when they rise, I don't know what will happen. Because we don't need this kind of a thing.
Morning, Chulas. It's Chris in Camperdown. You know, I would have asked Vincent, how does the resolutions or decisions of the National Dialogue influence government program as well as government policy? Because it will remain a talk show for as long as we do not change the way we do things and we do not take up the aspirations and the desires of South Africans so that the country changes its trajectory. That is what I would have asked him.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. It's a question that's actually apt because otherwise, unless there's a sense of implementability, can we implement what we agree on after this national dialogue? Unless we can secure that and agree that whatever we agree on will be implemented, then it risks becoming that talk shop that doesn't achieve anything. And the last thing we really need is yet another expensive talk shop. But I absolutely get the point you are making about, will it impact, the government program and policies? And to what Johnson was saying, I don't know, Johnson, for me, I think I would support, I don't want to pronounce one way or another, but for me, I think there's value in a conversation that says we are recalibrating. I don't want to be using big English, but what I'm saying is, if you've been listening the last few years, there's certainly a conversation of discontent. People that are saying, oh, this doesn't work for us. Oh, this constitution only serves, the rich, only serves, certain segments of our population, etc., etc. We have the constitutional review process in Parliament. That's one process. But I wonder to what extent the national dialogue will go down deep. The fundamental questions that say some of what we undertook at the start of our transition, does it remain relevant now? How do we tweak it? How do we make sure that it's efficient and it works going forward? And I think if we do that, as opposed to the day-to-day survivalist, we have to pass a budget, we have to agree on this bill, agree on that. No. What's our overall heading? I think there's value in a conversation like that. Does it need to cost as much as 700 million rand? I wonder. I don't know if I necessarily agree that those should be the costs in our current context. Glenn in Bedfordview, good morning. Also on the National Dialogue.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
That's my worry is that our president, since he came into power from 2018,
yes,
we've been having different investment conferences, and now there's this national dialogue. It is not going to benefit the country in any way, Tulas. For one, throughout the country, we've got buildings that belong to the government that are unused or either hijacked. But the government will prefer to hire out venues that belong to their cronies in order for them to benefit from this 700 million rands that is purported to be spent on this national dialogue. So the ANC, Tulas, must understand that as a country, we have lost trust in them. They must refer to themselves, not the country. There's nothing wrong with the country. The country only needs leaders that are committed, that will implement whatever we agree upon as a country. That's all.
Gotcha. Glenn, thank you for that. I think it's crystal clear at that point that is being made by Glenn in Bedfordview. Let me go to Thabo in Germiston. Good morning to you, Thabo, also on the same issue.
Hi, good morning, Chulas. How are you?
Very well, how are you? Please go ahead.
I'm good, man, I'm good. Chulas, listen, I'm not a pessimist.
Yeah.
I'm not a pessimist, but you see, South Africans know exactly what the critical challenges facing the country are. High unemployment, including that of the youth. We just came out of June 16 now. High unemployment in the country, crime levels, issues around immigration, and there's a whole lot. We South Africans know what the challenges, the critical challenges are facing this country. It's government that doesn't know what they're supposed to do, because they're supposed to be telling us what is it that they're going to do urgently to address these challenges, instead of calling for dialogues and talk shows and talk shows and talk shows. That won't even make any significant difference.
Thabo, sorry, Thabo, just to jump in there. As you are saying, government knows what the people know what the problems are. I'm actually reminded that the main mantra of President Ramaphosa in his capacity as ANC president in the period around the elections last year was, quote unquote, "We've heard you." And saying that in terms of the road shows that they were undertaking, all political parties, by the way, revealed what the pressing issues are of the people.
Absolutely, Chulas. Sorry to come in there.
Yeah.
He even said, "Tuma mina," and it's in Tumile. President, you answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The question that we are asking now as South Africans is that after all these years, President, have you done those things? That's what we want to know. And if you have not done them, as a matter of urgency, what is it that you are going to do to address those things?
Yeah. All right,
to do them urgently.
Thabo, thank you for that. That's Thabo in Germiston. Let me take a call from Thomas in Newcastle. Good morning to you, Thomas. Also on the National Dialogue.
Morning, Tulas. Good to have you back, man, with your flu. You know what, Tulas, if my understanding is proper, the whole story of the call by the government for us to have this dialogue is because politicians are not able to do anything that is tangible, partly because of their infighting, partly because of their incompetence, and partly because of their concentrating on eating. My understanding is this dialogue is involving the whole country, not the political parties and the important people. And those people are then going to be telling the government what needs to happen. And maybe the pertinent question is, are they going to do what is the outcomes of the dialogue?
Yes, that is
because
the question.
Ramaphosa can't do anything in the ANC because it is fragmented.
Yeah,
so whether we tumor him or whatever, he hasn't been able to get people prosecuted because the very people have been saying we will move chairs and all that. And they are busy torpedoing each other to prevent themselves from being in the position where they can be arrested and so on and so forth.
You know, Thomas, I've got to confess a certain level of romanticism about this national dialogue. And I suppose I need to temper that romanticism with reality, lived reality of recent processes. The romanticism comes from, in my mind, I sort of think of the processes leading up to the drafting of our constitution, the dialogues that were taking place at the University of the Western Cape, sectoral dialogues, and how women pushed and really insisted that they wanted their voices to be heard if you are going to be framing what the society will look like going forward. Then I'm also reminded of, you remember when they were doing the process around the attempt to amend the Section 25 of the Constitution. To be honest with you, I thought that was a beautiful national dialogue. Those consultative processes as they were being undertaken, I really enjoyed hearing directly from ordinary South Africans. But you're absolutely right. If it doesn't yield anything, what's the point then?
I think that to me, just to end off, maybe if I may, the issue should not be should we be having it, because we've had politicians fool us into thinking that they are making changes and all that, especially the ANC politicians and all that. Now it's the question of what do we put, maybe as a precursor even to this dialogue, to say you must. And how does the South African citizenry press the politicians to say you must do what the dialogue says? It's all right if we are failing because we said something, then failing because the politicians said something.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Thomas in Newcastle. So, it really is a fascinating topic, this issue of the national dialogue. And as I said, I do understand that I need to temper my romanticism about how dialogues have played out in the past with the reality that unless it achieves something, unless it produces friction and forward movement, then, it will really be yet another talk shop, which is really what everyone, the way I understand it, is trying to steer this national dialogue away from.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We start on the Ekurhuleni side of Gauteng with quite a backlog on the N12 today. It's a crash scene by Rondebolt Road. It's been with us for some time. It's pushing traffic from Boksburg back through Benoni, back to around Pitfontein Road side. So very heavy backlogs. N12 coming in towards Joburg. The R21's got your roadworks this morning, restricting you up towards the Bopsfontein exit. That's quite heavy. If you're leaving the airport on your way to Pretoria, you will hit a big backlog. A lot of traffic ducking off there and queuing up that high road out into the Whitfield area. Here's some bad news. Traffic lights are down, William Mandela and Sloane. So coming off the highway or coming out of four ways, that's all jam-packed again. And the N1 from Soweto still queuing up towards Maresburg this morning. N1 on your way towards Randburg, very heavy from roundabout sort of Rancho Road territory. And a crash on the N12 Potch Highway between Protea Glen and El Dorado Park, causing some delays as well. N14, Pretoria about the Krugersdorp Highway, that is heavy. You're going to be asked to sit this morning from the R55 Pretoria West exit all the way up to Brockfontein. Dustport Tunnel, absolutely jam-packed as well. And there's a lot of pressure in northern parts of Pretoria due to a power supply problem. Mayville, Vanderboom and surrounding areas. So routes like Lavender, Steve Biko, Paul Kruger, all very, very slow going. Durban having a busy Tuesday. The M13 from Hillcrest down the hill at Fields Hill into Pinetown, very sluggish. Big traffic on the N3 from Paradise Valley right through Spaghetti Junction to Sherwood. The N2 is absolutely jam-packed, routing from the M7 up through towards the work works at Westwood Mall, and a breakdown before Sabaya, still causing delays on your way to the airport as well. Cape Town, all fairly standard this morning. A couple of standouts, the R44 going into Stellenbosch. That is heavy if you're arriving from Somerset West, and the R300 is sitting in traffic. Interestingly, it's an issue trying to get onto the N1 outbound for a turnout towards sort of Kryfontein, backlogging from Van Riebeeck Road up to that N1 outbound link. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals. After league and cup triumphs for Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns, George Maluleka, Lethono Majoro and George Lebesi embark on a journey to conquer the glamorous world of cosmetics. Join us as we find out how they maneuver through this highly competitive industry. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 21 June at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Can one word unlock eternal glory? Okay, maybe just a shiny trophy and bragging rights. It's Password US, hosted by the king of chaos himself, Jimmy Fallon. Celebrities try to guess words. Hilarity ensues. Logic? Optional. Laughter guaranteed. Password US, where saying the right word might win the game, but saying the wrong one is way more fun. Password US, Saturdays 7:30 on S3. Say it like you mean it, or don't. We're not judging.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Here's a social issue that the Minister of Social Development, Sisi Sitolashe, believes warrants concern on our part. The Minister raising the alarm over the increasing violence against elderly citizens. Speaking in Fort Beaufort in the Eastern Cape during World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, the Minister has urged communities to take a stand against growing abuse, neglect, and exploitation of older persons, especially women falsely accused of witchcraft. Let's get a perspective from the Deputy Director General for Social Welfare Services at the Department of Social Development in the Eastern Cape, and that is Cesar Mahangwe. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So, is there a discernible pattern of that warrants concern that you've picked up that backs up the minister's concern about particularly the targeting of elderly people for violence and even murders, particularly in the Eastern Cape?
Yes, good morning to you and good morning to your listeners. Maybe before I answer your question, let me start by acknowledging the important day that we had so that communities should know that the problem of elderly abuse is not only a South African challenge, but it is a global challenge. We commemorated it on the 15th of June because that is a day that the World Health Organization has declared as a day where we need to observe this day. It's a day where we need to remember the victims of elderly abuse, what they're going through in various countries. So we are one of the countries that have signed, and hence we were commemorating it. Yes, of course, we were in Eastern Cape because, particularly in Fort Beaufort, it's because it's one of the hotspot areas in terms of the statistics that we've received from SAPS.
And what are the patterns? What do they talk to in terms of the vulnerability of the elderly to crime? Is it a matter of vulnerability due to the location that many elderly people find themselves in, being rural and remote in many instances, far away from any significant law enforcement? Or is it something that's more systematic that talks to patterns that align with patterns of crimes against women and gender-based violence in our country?
It's a whole lot of things. One is gender-based violence, because a lot of elderly that are attacked is women in particular. They suffer sexual assault, they are brutally killed. There's also issue of financial exploitation, and there's also the issue of deliberate neglect. And while the hotspots, most of them, they are in rural areas as well as underdeveloped areas because of, there's no security where they are staying, and most of them, they stay alone, they are isolated, and so they become easy targets for all these kinds of victimization. So therefore, for 2025 as a country, we are calling upon civil society, communities, because these things happen right in our eyes. We are in communities, we can see them happening. So we are calling everybody to rally around older persons and fight this and ensure that justice is served for them. And we do have a register, we call it Older Person Abuse Register, where we are capturing this victimization. That's why we know what type of victimization. And we are calling upon the community to actually register those cases so that we know more and we get to know which areas are more affected and begin to release intervention. Above all, in communities, the one that really older persons are being victimized is the issue of dementia. Because of their age, they lose memory loss. They suffer from memory loss, and that is called dementia. And because of that, they find themselves saying things that are not real. Sometimes they go to places where they're not supposed to. They cannot explain why they are there. And because we don't understand the illness that they are suffering, we tend to call them witches and we kill them. That's what is happening. It's one of the trends now that we've picked up.
So this registry, Elder Persons Abuse Registry, that's an interesting concept. I wasn't aware of it. Say a bit more about it. How does it work and how does it help in responding to this situation?
Okay, firstly, we knew that we have this problem of elderly abuse, but we did not have data, for us to be able to quantify how big is the problem and which areas are hotspots. So we needed something that would really guide our intervention so that when we are using interventions, we've got sort of like targeted areas and targeted interventions. So the register has really come handy to help us to locate where the problem is. So we've developed the register. It is both SAPs, because they are the sometimes first respondents, as well as GST. We've trained all our officials, the front, we call them frontline officials. We've trained them on it. When people come and report those type of cases that have to do with elderly abuse, they capture them on the register so that we know where is it coming from, what kind of victimization and all of that. So both police and us were working on it. We call it has Part A, where it captures all the alleged, victimization. And then Part B, we're still working on it. It's going to be the names of the perpetrators. We want the community to know who are these perpetrators as soon as the court hand over those names to us, because we can't put your name there when you have not been convicted. Once you are convicted, then you will enter into our register. So, but that's the register. We are popularizing it to communities to say, go and report. Don't just say it's a family matter. There's no family matter. Go and report so that we get to know exactly how big is the problem that we are addressing.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. Really insightful conversation there with Siza Mahangwe, who is the Deputy Director General for Social Welfare Services at the Eastern Cape Department of Social Development. And that brings us to 8 a.m. and Musa on standby with your latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Finance Minister to decide on National Dialogue budget, and Trump leaves G7 summit due to conflict between Israel and Iran. Good morning. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, will have the final say on the budget for the upcoming National Dialogue. Mashatile was speaking to the media at the Northwest University Rag Farm Stadium after delivering the Youth Day celebrations address yesterday. His comments come as the National Dialogue Committee has come under fire for the projected 770 million rand estimated cost for the dialogue.
The issue of the cost obviously will be looked upon by the Minister of Finance. And normally when there are activities like this, officials will start planning, will project the cost of accommodation, this and that. The Minister of Finance will finally decide whether funds are available in that regard, or we need to cut down. He will deal with that.
12 people have been killed in a crash involving a truck and a bus on the R34 near Vryheid just after midnight. 10 other passengers have been seriously injured, while a further 22 passengers suffered light injuries. It's alleged the oncoming truck struck the bus along its side, ripping the bus open. The bus was transporting supporters of a political party after attending Youth Day celebrations in Durban. KwaZulu-Natal Transport Department spokesperson Ndabezinhle Sibiya says the deceased were supporters of one of the biggest political parties, but this will be confirmed once they have spoken with the party's leader.
So the MEC will be interacting with the leader of the political party, and then as we move along, the MEC will update the people of KwaZulu-Natal and indicate how we're going to move forward. He has conveyed his condolences to the family of the victims, but what is important is also to ensure that the families of the victims are properly informed.
Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says President Cyril Ramaphosa will continue to assert South Africa's calls for de-escalation in conflicts in the Middle East and elsewhere during his deliberations at the G7 in Canada. Ramaphosa will later today engage in the leaders' outreach session focused on energy security, but geopolitical tensions are likely to be addressed on the margins of the forum and in the president's bilateral meetings with a number of leaders. Magwenya says South Africa will continue to play a supporting role in ending conflicts.
For some time now, President Ramaphosa has been quite consistent in calling for the de-escalation of tensions in the Middle East. Part of that call was to ensure that this conflict that we've seen in Gaza does not extend to the rest of the region. And so one of Canada's priorities for this G7 is the strengthening of peace and stability, where we're going to align with the position insofar as calling for a peaceful resolution of all conflicts, Russia and Ukraine, India and Pakistan, Iran and Israel now.
US President Donald Trump has left the G7 summit in Canada a day earlier to return to Washington amid the rising tensions in the Middle East. This development was announced by the White House after Trump posted on social media that Iran should have signed a deal he had put on the table in the now collapsed nuclear negotiations. Trump also posted that everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
President Trump also posted that America First meant that Iran could not have a nuclear weapon, as it appeared a major escalation could be coming after U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth directed the deployment of additional U.S. capabilities to the Middle East. Hegseth posted on X that these deployments were intended to enhance their defensive posture in the region amid reports that Israel had urged the United States to join their war against Iran. Spokesperson Caroline Levitt wrote on X that President Trump would be leaving right after the G7 heads of state dinner Monday to return to the White House.
And finally, 2 suspects arrested for allegedly dealing with dagga expected to appear at the Nelspruit Magistrates Court for a bail application. The suspects were arrested on the N4 road near Matsulu last Tuesday. They were travelling in a sedan loaded with over 100 bags of dagga and were allegedly being escorted by 3 White River Flying Squad police officers. They were all charged with dealing in dagga. Meanwhile, the police officers have been granted bail of 1,500 rand each, and their case was postponed to the 25th of next month for further investigation. Recapping the top story, Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will have the final say on the budget for the upcoming national dialogue. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
You won't hear this in the news headlines, but it's worth talking about. Lorette, a 61-year-old woman, is a real Outsurance client who switched and now saves a newsworthy 725 Rand a month on her 2024 BMW X1. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. We are building up to Mamelodi Sundowns beginning their FIFA Club World Cup journey in the United States. They're facing Ulsan Hyundai, and that's tonight in Florida. And in surfing, South Africa's Jordy Smith retains the #1 position in the World Surf Rankings. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A very good morning. Top stories here. 12 out of Benoni through Boksburg. On your way to Joburg remains busy. The Mike 1 from Boysons all the way through to Melrose under pressure and no traffic lights this morning. Willie Mandela and Sloane. So big delays out of four ways and big delays coming off the N1 north and south at that Willie Mandela exit. N1 going south between Brockfontein and New Road is jam-packed. N14, it's now another crash in that high collision zone. This time of morning, N14, Krugersdorp Highway, Pretoria bound at Brockfontein. Interchange and a power supply problem. Pretoria north, so Vanderboom and Mayville, and routes that run through the area very slow. Durban side today, the N2 running north up towards the airport, a breakdown before Sabaya, so it's some delays getting up from the Gateway exit. N3 inbound Paradise Valley through to Spaghetti Junction's heavy, and the M13 between Westville and Sherwood, absolutely dreadful. Cape Town, bit of pressure N1 into town, approaching Brackenfell Boulevard. Marine Drive still busy out of Tableview through towards the Paddocks Mall, and the M3 inbound from top of Wynberg Hill jammed through to Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Tuesday. It is absolutely great to be in your company. The National Dialogue. What National Dialogue? We've been having it. We've been having it here on SAFM. So the National Dialogue is well and truly underway. And a lot of you weighing in on the concept of the National Dialogue, the official one now, the one that is being convened by the President as head of state, and also with the assistance of that task team and the eminent persons group that will involve all of us. It's meant to be a process, not an event. It will start with a national convention on the 15th of August, but then followed by other processes. So someone here says on the WhatsApp line, and preferring to remain anonymous, says, the dialogue is not needed because it won't change anything. So let's not waste scarce resources. That's the view of one person there. Another person saying, and in fact it's from Mofokeng in the Eastern Free State, who says the only challenge with the South African government is that they don't want to interact with citizens and hear what their needs are. They want to do what they deem necessary on behalf of South Africans without proper consultations with ordinary citizens. Thanks again for your valued efforts, and that comes through from Mofokeng in the Eastern Free State. Thank you for that, Mofokeng, for that input. And lastly, let me read one from AB in Durban, who says, it starts with an exclamation that says, the whole National Dialogue initiative is estimated to cost in excess of 700 million rand. Given past history, it will definitely go way past that figure. You want to know what's the problem and how to fix it, Mr. President? Just tune into our radio stations where the nation is in conversation. You will hear the outrage at one big issue, corruption. And the 700 million rand is a wonderful opportunity for the vultures to siphon off even more lovely loot. So that's coming through from AB in Durban. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes as well as your calls. Do give me a call. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Send your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals. After league and cup triumphs for Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns, George Maluleka, Lesonolo Majoro and George Lebesi embark on a journey to conquer the glamorous world of cosmetics. Join us as we find out how they maneuver through this highly competitive industry. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 21 June at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. The Rockets want to take full control of 90 minutes. Meanwhile, First Touch ladies want to transition quick with First Touch football. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Do not miss out on glittering action between TS Galaxy Queens and First Touch ladies on Saturday, 21 June at 3 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Call to Lasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, it is quite clear that the overwhelming majority of you want to have a dialogue about the dialogue. So you want to talk about the national dialogue. But let me accommodate one or two people that want to drive the conversation in a different direction and then pivot back to the national dialogue. Someone here wants to talk about former President Jacob Zuma.
Good morning, Thula Sizwe. Good morning to the SAFM listeners. Thula Sizwe, one of the elements I admire about Jacob Zuma's leadership style is decision-making. I might have my own opinion on the justification around many of his decisions, but I am admiring the decision-making element. He's very clear with that, and that's something good that you can take out of his leadership style. Segwanele Pretoria.
So, Wanele, thank you for that. And of course, I suppose with allusion there to what he was saying was the former president in his capacity as the leader of the MK party when he was speaking yesterday during the launch of the MK party's youth league and how they'll be decisive in ensuring that nothing stands in the way, no matter how popular and how loved you think you are as a leader, you will be dealt with if you stand in the way of the objectives of the political party, the MK party. Someone here wants to talk about the SANDF and the soldiers that are returning to the country.
Good morning to us and the SAFM listeners. To us, those soldiers that are coming back home, please, they must come here to the towns and townships where there is a crime. Because if they come back, what are they going to be doing now? They will be just sitting there. No, they must be deployed on the streets here because there's too much crime. I thank you. Keep them orange farm.
Yeah, thank you for that. Isn't that a topic that would be nice to put on the agenda of the national dialogue, for example, defense in a democracy? And I know that was the title of the defense review many years ago, but I'm using the concept to say, what role does the SANDF play in law enforcement such that it happens constitutionally, but at the same time asserts the authority of the state? Isn't that part of the conversations we should be having about when do we deploy the SANDF given our crime crisis in the country, the force multiplier effect? What do we do? How do we ensure that they plug in? I think, I don't know, just in my own mind, that may be one of the many topics we may want to put on the agenda of the national dialogue. Speaking of that, then, let's go to Bond in Gqeberha. Good morning to you, Bond. You want to talk to me about the national dialogue? Long time, my friend.
Yes. Good morning. Long time to us. Unfortunately, I also joined the overwhelming majority of listeners. It's untimely and unnecessary. I've lived long enough to observe that we South Africans are notorious in having gatherings, but very, very shallow in implementation. We just don't do that. It's untimely because it ought to have been done during that period of 1990 to 1994. so that the leaders, the political parties should have asked us, what kind of new South Africa did you want, rather than meeting at Codesa and deciding for us. That time passed. It's like locking the stable after the horse has bolted. Secondly, there have to be clear reasons for a national dialogue. The three dialogues that we had historically, the 1908 Convention for a New South Africa, it was to amalgamate the 4 provinces and have a new South Africa. That was done. 1955 Freedom Charter principles were enunciated at Kliptown. That was done. The last one at Codesa, we had the new South Africa. What is the purpose for this one? Replacing manifestos of political parties. What is the purpose?
Well,
There's no purpose.
Isn't it recalibration that says we've gone 30 years? Are we still happy with the direction we are going? Do we need to, shift and change direction?
Exactly, Tulas. If we were like a country like Finland, the happiest country that has no division, we're so socially divided. There's no cohesion. Even if we come with something, it will be difficult to implement.
All right.
It will be difficult. So what I'm proposing in closing, the president should have a referendum. Just one question in terms of Section 84. Do you want a national dialogue or not? If the answer is no, we stop it there. Or a national therapy for all South Africans, because we're so divided through our past, through the 300 years. Let's rather have a national therapy for South Africans than an endless talk.
Bond, thank you for that. That's Bond in Gqeberha. Let me go to Thabiso in Polokwane. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Tulas.
Yes, please go ahead.
No, I think we must welcome the dialogue. It's important because we spend much of our time. I mean, if South Africans do not love this discussion and debating, maybe talk shows all over the radio stations across will be boring. I mean, I'm one of an ardent callers and listeners of various radio stations, and I contribute quite immensely. So now South Africans like to discuss. So now we're bringing an opportunity to all South Africans to discuss and be able to find the resolution. How many times do people call in your talk show and raise issues and there are no solutions because we're just venting and all of that? But now there's a national dialogue that is happening. That is going to happen, of course. But my major worry, of course, would be the budgetary issues, because it looks steep for me to host a dialogue and cost about an excess of more than 700 million. I think it's too much. We don't have that kind of money for a discussion, whilst the discussion is needed. Certainly, it will be that we before the dialogue can be hosted, let's have a legal basis for it, so that we know that these are the resolutions that have been taken in the dialogue. And legally, how do we make sure that they filter into our constitution to make sure that indeed whatever we discuss there is what we can point that none of South Africans have been able to come up with decision. Because I suspect South Africans might want a serious constitutional change. Among others, the electoral system might be a very, 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 very topical.
Thabiso, thank you for that. That's Thabiso. I find no fault in anything that you've said there, Thabiso. The enforceability of it. We don't want a report that will sit there and gather dust. And in fact, I think, let me make this point. The last thing we want is 10 years from now, 15 years from now, to have a commission of inquiry to inquire into why the resolutions of the national dialogue were never implemented. Something akin to what we are seeing with the TRC, cases commission that is now being, the president has announced. Lastly, Peggy, let me take a call from you quickly on the national dialogue as well. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Tulas. All what I want to say is that I have listened to you talking to Ubaba Vincent Magwenya. And Ubaba Vincent Magwenya, he's talking massive English and he's massaging our minds and, he's taking all these sort of things. I want to say we are a democratic country, and I will agree with the previous caller that said that a referendum, the president has to at least engage, because 700 million or over 700 million doesn't really add up. Secondly, I want to say that we are in a situation whereby the Eastern Cape, whereby the KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, are running through a very serious and very, very awkward situation. That 770 million rand can play a major role in assisting those people. We are living in a fourth industrial revolution. if a dialogue has to take place, let them look at measures, how communication can be done best, and reduce all the budgets that they can, other than to say 770 million. The very same thing that we have said to us, that this will result in other inquiries, other commissions, where resolutions will be will never be implemented. It is not on, and I pray that Ubaba Vincent Magwenya and the presidency and the president himself listen to your show, because the LSM, or people who call into your show, are people who are well informed, are people who does their own research, are people who not just speak air on air.
100%.
So they must at least ask your podcast, because your show speaks volume.
Thank you.
One, it's up to 1,000 listeners if you look at the ratio of people who are talking onto your show and will make contribution. Thank you.
Biggie, I appreciate your time. That's Biggie in Mpumalanga there. Just also emphasizing the need for this to produce forward movement and not become yet another report that gathers dust with no implementation.
It's Roll or Be Rolled in the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2. Elimination Week is all about pasta. After learning the art of making fresh pasta from the team at Scala in Cape Town, contestants must present their own unique spin on this Italian classic. Who will earn a spot in the next round and who's going home? Find out on the Tastemaster SA Tuesday evenings at 7:30. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Tulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
23 minutes after 8. Let's focus on Youth Month now. As the country marks Youth Month, Youth Capital is putting the spotlight on the lived experiences of young people with a powerful new advocacy tool. It's called Tetange, which means let's talk about. And it's a conversation game designed to spark honest, reflective dialogue on what it's like to grow up in South Africa. Let's hear more about it. I'm joined by Nape Sinong, who is the mobilizer strategist at Youth Capital. Youth Capital is a campaign that is advocating for policy change to solve unemployment. Nape, good morning. Great to talk to you once again. Tell me about Tetange. What is that? What is that campaign? You're saying that it's a conversation game. How does it fit in with some of the issues that we are trying to solve for?
So Tetange, as you've explained, means let's talk about, is a conversation card game that has the different cards are basically prompts, conversation prompts. For example, one of the cards asks, the youth of 1976 had this generational mission that they were fighting for. What is the youth of today fighting for? And it's basically meant, as you said, to facilitate conversations amongst South Africans, because we are a very fragmented country, as you know, amongst racial lines, class lines, and geography, and also language. So this is a conversation card game that aims to bring people together in conversation to also ensure that as South Africans we know that, or to remind us rather, that we are actually similar even in our diversity. It's something that we talk about quite a lot. And it stems out from the observation that we made as we do our work in police, our advocacy work in youth unemployment, that often young people think that it's their fault that they are not employed. And they don't, that realization that unemployment in the country is structural and systemic does not come. But these card games really do help remind young people when they play amongst each other or play with older people or with those in power that this issue of unemployment is a systemic issue that requires collective action. So it's not just the burden of young people.
So Nape, that's an interesting take on this. I mean, in a way, I imagine that you want to infuse a fair amount of fun while at the same time engaging with the issues at play. So give me an example. I understand that you've got 32 thought-provoking prompts that are part of this card game.
So as you're saying, we're trying to put an element of fun in talking about advocacy and our lived experiences as young people in South Africa. An example would be, some colleagues and some friends that have played the game at dinner parties, for example, where, you are having, maybe due to last season with a couple of friends, you are having a dinner party, but it really helps, really helps the group to understand that, even though we are together, for example, people in urban areas, we come together some coming from villages, some coming from townships, some coming from suburbia. It really helps us understand that, we all have different journeys into the world of work, into the world of making money, and that kind of a thing. So there's a card that is very interesting, I think, that asks, looking at me, what do you think has been easy for me? We all know that unemployment also becomes gendered. We know that the young black women, hit the most by unemployment, even though it's a national issue. But it also makes us realize that, gender, class, and all these other social divides do actually mean that we have different journeys towards employment.
So it sounds fascinating. Will you be supplying the card game for the upcoming national convention and the national dialogue? Because it sounds to me like something that does belong there.
We would love to get involved in something like that, like the national dialogue, because we do acknowledge that as a country we really need to talk so that we can have collective responsibility in terms of some of the issues that we are facing. We would love to. It's just, has to be the background work that needs to happen there in terms of how do we participate as a civil society organization in this national dialogue. But also, we are selling the cards on the Daily Maverick website. We are also selling the cards here in Cape Town at the Book Lounge and also in Durban at Humble Coffee, and are in the process of building an online store on our website. And we're selling these cards not for profit, but so that we can sustain printing more cards and also making the iterations that need to happen. Of course, with the feedback that comes from our community and the people that play the cards. So we're just selling the cards at 80 Rand to ensure that we are sustainable in terms of printing more and iterating where we need to iterate.
Nape, thank you for that. That's an interesting and innovative way of approaching what is a gravely serious matter, the issues around youth unemployment in our country. That's Nape Sinong, who is the mobilizer strategist at Youth Capital.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. We'll kick off with Mamelodi Sundowns goalkeeper Dennis Onyango, one of the 3 surviving members from the last time the Tshwane Giants were in the FIFA Club World Cup, says the new format will be effective in the long run. The Brazilians were in Japan nearly 9 years ago, losing both matches in Osaka. Now that the world governing body has finally launched a 32-club competition with 12 venues in the USA, Sundowns will be facing Ulsan HD in Florida with their Group F opener to be followed by fixtures against Borussia Dortmund and Fluminense. Onyango adds that with more games comes the opportunity to give Africa, especially Sundowns, the chance to challenge.
The sky is the limit. Is to give everything. You must give everything that you have on the pitch, leave every skin on the pitch. And I think that's the sky. The sky is the limit for us. It's to give our best, to try and play beautiful football, to entertain the people that are watching from all over the world, and to represent the continent in the best way.
Let's go now to Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. They're busy preparing for their pre-season camps. Both teams off to Europe ahead of the 2025-26 Betway Premiership campaign. Amakosi will be in the Netherlands from the 3rd of July to the 19th, while Orlando Pirates will head to Spain in the same month. Pirates are yet to announce who will replace Jose Rivero as their head coach. Now, surfing, South Africa's Jordy Smith has retained his #1 spot in the World Surf Rankings, despite an early round of 16 exit at the Trestles Pro in California. And finally, motorsport, Lewis Hamilton says he's devastated after running over a groundhog during the Canadian Grand Prix. The Ferrari driver hit the rodent during the 13th lap of the race in Montreal, leaving a hole in the floor of his car. The 40-year-old ended up finishing 6th, with his team estimating that the damage cost Hamilton about half a second per lap for the remainder of the race. And that's how we wrap it up. We'll be back with more sports. That's around 12:30 with John Herrica. He'll be hitting the ground running. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the EFF has confirmed the bus involved in a crash in Vryheid in northern KwaZulu-Natal was carrying its members. 12 people died in the early hours of this morning when the bus collided with a truck. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will have the final say on the budget for the upcoming national dialogue. And leaders at the disrupted G7 summit in Canada have discussed trade and the conflict in Ukraine, as well as the Israel-Iran crisis. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy in the north of Joburg. It's the problematic traffic light junction of Winnie Mandela and Sloane. When they go down, it has a major impact because it affects not only the traffic coming out of four ways on Winnie Mandela, because that traffic is so bad, clogged up out of four ways towards Bryson across the N1 highway bridge. It also has a major impact on the traffic flow coming off the highway. So if you're on the N1 and you're driving down from Rivonia Road, that's heavy towards Winnie Mandela, north from Bayers, Nordier up through Randburg. Towards Winnie Mandela, very heavy backlogs highway and on Winnie Mandela as well. Power outage in Pretoria north this morning, Mayville, Vanderboom, so routes like Steve Biko, Lavender, Paul Kruger, Eskia and Pathlelly Drive, all of those routes under a lot of extra pressure because a lot of traffic lights in the region are down. Durban, the N2 going north up towards Westwood Mall remains busy. Further queues up between Gateway and the Sabaya exit. That's a breakdown on your way to the airport. The N3, a breakdown at Cliffdale, so stays heavy, very heavy, from Keir Ridge up Cliffdale on your way through to Pietermaritzburg. And Cape Town, a crash on the M5 running north at Barclay Road in the Maitland area. That traffic wasn't too bad on the M5, but all of a sudden it's backlogging to Kenilworth, so heavy on your way up towards Kuburg at a change. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauling Lechela. Ndauling, it's the news that many of us have been dreading, isn't it? The start of the impact of global events that, may seem to be happening far away from us, but actually, given the interconnectedness, we are starting to see that. Tell me about what economists are saying about higher fuel prices.
So some economists have been spooked by the tensions taking place in the Middle East that have led to a higher oil price. And so they are saying with sustained gains in the oil price, this could lead to higher fuel prices here at home, potentially increasing inflation. Now, in a Business Day article, independent economist Delise Kruger predicts a possible fuel price hike of 30 to 50 cents per litre in July, which could feed into inflation and raise the base for the second half of the year. Meanwhile, Old Mutual chief economist Johan Als notes that the situation adds uncertainty to the inflation and interest rate outlook. Now, Als believes that a swift de-escalation could limit the economic impact, but a broader conflict could send oil prices surging to $130 to $150 per barrel, leading to increased volatility in inflation and interest rates. The last time I checked, that oil price was trading around $72 per barrel. Now, the SARB's next interest rate decision is scheduled for the 31st of July, giving policymakers some time to assess the impact this could have on inflation. Now, despite this, Al still thinks there's a possibility of an interest rate cut in July, depending on how the situation unfolds. Meanwhile, a July fuel price increase now seems likely, which could push inflation forecasts up from 3% to 3.1 to 3.2%. However, if oil price gains don't hold, inflation is expected to remain mild for the rest of the year. So something we need to, pay close attention to when it comes to those oil prices.
Man, it seems like the global economy and by extension our own, we just can't catch a break, can we?
At all.
If it's not COVID, it's tariffs. If it's not tariffs, it's conflict. Just there's always something going on to set us back. So off the back of that then, Dowling, tell me about Sasol and them making gains following the jump in global oil prices.
Now they seem to be catching a break, right? The share price surging over 10% on Friday, reaching 96 rand 56 cents due to rising oil prices amid those escalating tensions in the Middle East. Now, strikes between Israel and Iran sparked fears of a broader conflict, causing Brent crude prices to jump above the $70 per barrel mark. Investors are betting on Sasol's fortunes improving due to its high exposure to that oil price and the rand exchange rate. Analysts said the oil price increase could boost Sasol's profit margins and earnings, given its reliance on energy and chemical products. Now, Sasol recently facing challenges, including weaker fuel prices and sales volumes, leading to a decline in interim headline earnings. But a stronger share price may help the company manage its debt profile and refinancing costs. Despite the recent headwinds, some investors are optimistic about Sasol's prospects, and they've cited the company's efforts to streamline its business, reduce debt, and potentially unbundle its international business. The share price rally is also seen as part of a broader commodity markets trend, with oil prices following gold and other commodities. We've also seen the likes of platinum tick higher.
Lastly, Ntaoling, what kind of a trading day can we expect on this Tuesday?
So our local markets will be playing catch up today. We are likely in for a mixed open, with investors tracking developments in the Middle East. In terms of company news, there are results out from property players, Storage and Vukile. Then over on the currency front, the rand stable this morning, just trending around that 1780 to 85 level. It's sitting at 1783 to the dollar this hour. And then stateside, futures are in the red as traders are on edge, eyeing escalating tensions between Israel and Iran and waiting the Fed's next rate decision. That announcement tomorrow. And then traders in Asia digesting the Bank of Japan's latest move. Policymakers leaving rates unchanged this morning and bringing some sort of calm as it was an expected move. The Nikkei, the only index in the green on that front, up 0.6%.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntaoling Lechela. She's kept you updated on business, economics, and the markets throughout the course of the show this morning.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Straight to Dennis in Tshwane. Good morning to you, Dennis. I appreciate you, Dennis. Let me just start there. You've been holding for a very long time, and I do apologize that it took this long to get to you. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Our leaders, our black leaders, give me anxiety. Really, they give me anxiety, and I think the pool of leadership in this country is also. I don't think they understand what their mandate is as leaders. This is to guide us and assist us to get to resolution to some of the problems that we are facing in the country. The guest that you had that discussed the issue of elderly, attacks on elderly people,
yes,
that is not the new thing whatsoever. There's even a song about the attacks on black women that are elderly, that are going through health challenges. And she's not giving us tangible solutions. She's telling us to rally against such incidents. Yes, they have a register. I appreciate that they have a register. What do they do with that register? This thing has been going on for so long.
Yeah.
We need them to guide us and give us tangible solutions. Women are dying. I promise you, we know information. We also track such things. And lastly, with regard to this dialogue, national dialogue, I also think it's a waste of time. We can tell them what's wrong. We can give that information freely. One of the issues that I know that impacts us a lot is the disconnect between the Constitution, the legislature, the judiciary, and the police. There seems to be a disconnect there. And all those must talk to each other because the police do their arrest, but when it comes to the judiciary, there's something else. So there's a huge disconnect. And we can give them that information for free. They don't need to spend money on it.
All right. So I guess, Dennis, the takeout here is that there needs to be decisive leadership acting on what is already known.
Yeah, but they don't know. The thing is, I don't think they know. They don't know. They don't have solutions.
Yeah.
We have solutions. That we can do that on their behalf, free of charge.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Dennis in Tshwane there, who was holding for quite some time before we got to Dennis with that call. Mukwena in Rustenburg, good morning to you. Yes, please go ahead. Mukwena in Rustenburg, can you hear me?
Hi, Ras Tulasize.
Yes, good sir. Good.
I wanted to address you today, not as a consultant or a shareholder, as Ras Tulasize.
All right.
Yes, Tulasize. When we were having with Vincent in the morning conversation, he's saying that this is not the national dialogue. Is not the president's initiative.
Yes, it came from the people.
Which people? That's the question that I called. I wanted to hear who is that person, because he says that it's South African.
Yes.
Precisely, it's not coming from me. Neither does it come from you. Who? And now there are lists of those individuals which they've been touted that will be among the people who will be on these things. Who chose those people? Do we really need 700, almost $1 billion to talk?
So Mokoena, you know when you say who called for this national dialogue, I think I saw in the last few days people recapping former President Thabo Mbeki being among the first people to moot this whole idea of a national dialogue. But I do know also, Mokoena, that the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation has this dialogue among equals. Once a year, it happens in Drakensberg. And I've always found that, and I've attended it quite a few times, I've found that to be quite interesting in terms of the people that are pulled into a room and have discussions. They're not going to come out and solve the world's problems, but they do have leaders in their own right in various sectors of society, grappling with, identifying what the problems are and what possible pathways towards solutions. So there is, and then someone has been pointing out that we have dialogues every day.
To run over
yes.
You, but the question isn't, don't we know that we need good sanitation at our schools? Don't we know that we need to create employment? Don't we know that the crime rate is high? Don't we know that we need good infrastructure? Don't we know that?
Gotcha.
What's going to be talked about? Do we need $1 billion to talk? We have spent $1 billion on what is this thing of Zondo?
The commission.
$1 billion there. What came out of that? Nothing. And now we are going to talk for $1 billion.
All right. Mokoena, thank you for that. Let's leave it there. That's Mokoena and Rustenburg there. Just along that line of arguments about the national dialogue, its necessity, and perhaps the eventual effectiveness. I've got to stress, though, that the 700 million rand, the official position from the presidency is that there is no budget that has been set down. This is an estimate by some of the foundations that are involved, and ultimately it will come down to National Treasury and government taking fiscal responsibility to ensure that this dialogue happens in a manner that doesn't cost an arm and a leg to you and I, the taxpayer.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let's turn to the story now. The recent shooting dead of 4 high school pupils in separate incidents in Samora Machel in Cape Town has reignited concerns about pupil safety in the Western Cape. Between 22 May and 11 June, 4 high school learners, Indipile Kebevana, who was 18 years old, Semamgele Hamane, who was 18 years old, Ntokozo Ngobo, 17, and Aznani Siklubane, who was 15, were fatally shot in separate incidents while commuting to or from school. The organization Equal Education says it's heartbroken and outraged by the recent loss of lives in areas around Samora Machel. And from Equal Education, I'm joined by Ayanda Sishi Wigzal, who is Communications Manager at Equal Education. Thank you for your time this morning. Just your own understanding of what's at play here. So separate incidents and these 4 young people have lost their lives in a senseless manner. What's your understanding of the underpinning phenomena and problems that lead to these incidents?
Good morning to Lesizwe and good morning to all of the SAFM listeners. What Equal Education is seeing currently right now is what we've been always talking about for the past 10 years, is that the communities in which schools are currently in are not safe. Learners are not safe when they are going to and from school. We have a report that we released in 2013 called Safety Ngoku, which specifically researched why it is that communities and schools and the journey going from home to schools in certain provinces, but particularly in the Western Cape, is not safe. And what we found is that is that children have been reporting before that they are having trouble going to school because of the communities in which they are living in. There's no scholar transport that is safe enough for them to take. Some of them can't afford to have scholar transport, which means that they need to walk to school, and that walk to school is a perilous one. They are encountering crime, they are encountering sexual assault when going on that journey to school and from school as well. And so out of that report that came from Equal Education called Safety Ngoko, what we did was that we had the walking initiative, which we asked for support from the government if they could please make sure that people can volunteer to make spaces safer for children to walk to school, to and from school. So our parent branches in the Western Cape decided that they're going to take that upon themselves to do that. When engaging with the Western Cape government, what we came to find was that they saw the reports rather as just an allegation that they are not keeping communities safe, which absolutely is not the truth. We are not here to fight. What we are here to do is to try and work together in order for us to find solutions to the safety issues that children in schools are currently facing, but particularly in the Western Cape.
How difficult a problem is this to resolve, the safety of children as they commute to and from school? How difficult is it to resolve, given the fact that, as you highlighted in your eSafety Ngoku campaign, the safety of children en route to and from school cannot be separated from the safety and security situation in communities themselves?
And that's just the golden line here, is that if you solve the issues of communities, because schools exist in communities, then you will solve the issue of children being safe going to and from schools. This is a holistic problem. It's not a problem that is just specified for the Department of Education. This is a holistic problem that we are currently facing right now, and we need holistic solutions to this. How we find those solutions is by listening to the people that are in those communities who are telling you that we need to build infrastructure. People need to have access to the economy. They need to feed their families. They need to make sure that they're able to live fulfilled lives in the communities in which they come from. That is how we solve this problem, by making sure that the schools themselves are equipped enough. The previous caller was talking about water and sanitation, infrastructure. These are problems that we have always had in South Africa. Yes, Mokoena is his name. I remember him correctly. But I just caught just a snippet of his conversation. But he was correct to say that these are issues that we have been speaking about in this country for the past 20 years. These are problems that could have been fixed because the money and the budget it was there. But now our money and our budget is being moved towards austerity measures, towards paying off debt, and the money that is meant to be used for public good is now being used to service debt. We have communities who stepped up and said that we will take part in the walking initiative to make sure that children are safe when they are going to and from schools. But it's just simply it is a really good thing that communities are stepping up, but we need the government to also meet us where we are as well, so that people can be resourced enough in order for them to support their communities, but also live fulfilled lives within their communities so that everybody is safe.
Are there short-term interventions that can be put in place even as we work towards longer-term solutions, more sustainable solutions? You mentioned you guys had something called a walking bus some time ago.
Yes.
What are some of those short-term interventions that can be put in place?
So the walking bus is parents who have volunteered from different communities in order to walk with children to schools. And it was a wonderful initiative that was continued by Equal Education, and it just showed that community members are willing to do who are willing to pick their hands up in order to work with us and with children in order to make sure that they are safe. But the short-term solutions to this is also making sure that there is scholar transport for children that is safe, and scholar transport that is not affordable but that is free. Because that is part of having scholar transport is part of a child having a dignified and just education. And so if that scholar transport was available for children, that would be a really, really wonderful idea in order to solve this issue, so that children are not walking to school in unsafe places. But we also need the government to just meet us where they are, speak to communities, because communities have the solutions to the problems that they are facing themselves. And touching on the national dialogue, if our government could honestly do the right thing and just come from their ivory towers instead of having this top top-down approach of having these elite, wonderful people coming to speak about these issues that are happening in our communities. How's about we take that money and just go straight to the communities themselves? There doesn't have to be a big to-do at Gallagher Estate, because we are always having community engagements. There are always town halls that are taking place. How's about a government official go and sit in one of those, grab a chair, grab a dictaphone, make sure that there's a secretariat that is willing to take notes of the things that are taking place there, and then go and take those back to national government and see how it is that we can filter down those solutions to communities, because the communities have the solutions to their problems. They are just not listened to enough.
Sure. Gotta thank you for that. That's Ayanda Sishi Wigzal, who is Communications Manager at Equal Education.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Busy in the northern parts of Pretoria. There's a power outage this morning, so routes like Steve Biko through Vanderbilt, Meskia and Pimville around Potco, Mopani Highway, bottom end of it, very busy. And also a crash at Dustport Tunnel, so Bremer Street coming off the Mopani Highway through the tunnel down towards Transaranya remains slow. Also crash on the N4, Emelefleni Highway, driving into Pretoria and Hatfield just by the N1. That's a big backlog through Watermeyer Street. Crash on the N14, Krugersdorp Highway at Brockfontein. It's been there a while. It's still causing a really big delay. Pretoria bound from as far back as the R55 exit. Now, roadworks on the R21 this morning, northbound going up towards Bobsfontein Road. So if you're leaving the airport on way towards Pretoria, that's heavy. And there's some roadworks on your way to the airport by the NGen services. So coming from Clayville airport bound, that's very slow. And no traffic lights, William Mandela and Sloane. So very heavy getting off the highway this morning. The M1 south from Rivonia, north from Randburg, all badly backed up. Broken down vehicles around Durban, N3, Cliffdale side. It's heavy again from Key Ridge on your way to PMB. There's a breakdown at Sabaya, so on your way to the airport from Gateway, that's all very slow going as well. Cape Town this morning, traffic on the N1 into town, fairly busy from Plattekloof Hill, the N2 inbound from Langa through Hospital Bend, and the M5, the earlier crash up at Barclay Road, looks like it's being cleared, but it's left a lot of traffic on that Route 5 this morning from Ottery through Kenilworth up to Rondebosch towards the N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Turn up the heat on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2 as the contestants head out to a world-famous Winelands estate to take on the ultimate comfort food challenge, gourmet burgers. Inspired by their dads, they must create the ultimate burger to capture his spirit, with every element made by hand. Fire up the grill and catch the Tastemaster SA Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Call Tulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
I've got to tell you, just tapping into the energy that I've picked up this morning, the fervor and your passion for the issues that are, as Ashraf Garda would put it, that drive the national pulse in this country. And by the way, you can listen to Ashraf between 3 and 6 p.m. here on SAFM, just putting his finger on the national pulse. You guys have your finger on the national pulse, and it has come through this morning in a lot of the conversations. The national dialogue, by the time we get to it, it may be that actually a lot of the issues have been ventilated quite extensively. Let me read one or two messages before I go to Janine with a call. One person says, in reflection of the conversation we just had now about scholar safety in the Western Cape, this person says, our community in Worcester, or is it Worcester? How do you pronounce it? Our community in Worcester, Western Cape, has been doing the walking school bus, quote unquote, for years without compensation and will continue to do this. It's about our children's safety. We do not have equal education or any political party to start or continue. It's always been a community initiative, and that is absolutely fantastic. And then someone else then says, once again, can someone ask Alan Windy why he diverted money from education and health to purchase vehicles for law enforcement? He openly stated this. It's a fact. So I suppose then that's one to take up as we discuss issues of community safety and the safety of scholars as they commute to and from school. That is certainly something that can be picked up with the Western Cape government. Janine in Cape Town, good morning to you. You want to talk about the national dialogue? Yes.
Good morning to Latsuzwe and your team. And yeah, from a cold Cape Town.
Yeah.
were very warm.
For a change, you guys must get cold, man. It seemed you guys had better weather than we did in Gauteng, so I don't mind you guys feeling a bit of cold.
No, I love the cold weather, and also just want to commend you, Thulasizwe. Fantastic show.
Thank you.
Safe space where we can just air our views and vent our blood boiling points.
National dialogue.
Yeah. No, actually, my husband and I were listening, and we just want to comment just a short thing. Yeah, yes, it's very disheartening to hear 700 million for national dialogue, and they're going to talk, spend the money on hotels and catering and cars and VIP and all of those things. And then afterwards, it's going to be no solution, and we're going to be like, 700 million wasted. But what upsets us more, 26 billion was just borrowed from the World Bank. We spend 1.6 billion back pay in debt every day as a country.
Yep.
There's people in the Western Cape that are sitting on backlog of houses that they're waiting for 20, 30 years on a waiting list. So I just wish that money could have been channeled to if it is that they, should spend 700 million, can we channel it to the right areas that needs the attention?
Yeah,
Like
priorities.
the housing, bringing a mother that's waiting 30 years a little bit forward by blessing her with the keys to her house.
Yeah,
Can we
priorities,
just
Jenny.
action those things?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Priorities,
so
priorities.
that's what I just wanted my husband and I want to say this morning. Gosh.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Janine. That's Janine
Thank
in
you.
Cape Town. I am duty bound to once again emphasize that the 700 million rand, we've been told this morning by Vincent Magwenya that this is not the budget that has been agreed upon and set down. It is merely the thinking of those foundations involved with the process. But ultimately, government will take responsibility, keeping in mind our fiscal realities. I always have that duty to bring that perspective, even as we reflect on the price tag for the national dialogue. Let me go to Tony in Joburg. Good morning to you, Tony. Also on the same issue.
Hey, good morning, Thulasizwe. How are you, my brother?
Very well. How are you, sir?
I'm good. A quick one. I think for me, we don't really need the dialogue. I want to concur with the previous caller when he was talking about perhaps we needed a national therapy, right?
Yeah.
But I want to highlight the issue of the dialogue. A while back, there was a district development model that was introduced.
Yes, I remember that.
Right. The district development model, this is where the president and the minister will go to communities, local government to really get through the issues on the ground. That has been going on for the past 3 years or so. So the issues are already there. They've already been ventilated by a number of, communities. So for me, I think what is needed is to really package all those issues properly, have a dashboard across government where somebody can monitor how things are going and where do we need to deploy funds to address those issues. We don't need a dialogue because then it means we're going back to the same thing. The Mbizos have been held already.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm highlighting the therapy is that since the beginning of this year, we've seen how the nation is divided. I don't want to go into detail, but we've seen people have come out of their holes to show who they really are.
Yeah.
And I think those are some of the issues that needs to be addressed in terms of really getting us back on track and getting the nation, focusing on the process.
So very quickly then, Tony, is it your sense then that if we order our steps properly where we are stomping right now, our concerns about the overall heading in terms of where we are heading in the long term will be addressed if we consolidate our understanding of where our feet are currently stomping, and that will lead us in the right direction without needing a national, a whole thing that says, let's set course for the long term. We can set course by fixing where our feet are stomping right now.
Absolutely, Tula. So let's not waste time in talking. Let's just fix, because the things are already there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Tony, thank you
very
for
much.
that. That's Tony in Joburg. And that's it, really. Our full and final account to you this morning in lieu of your morning brief. But don't go anywhere. Kathy Mohlahlana and the team at The Talking Point up next immediately after the news. And with due respect to the great Jim Clancy, I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and you've been briefed.
In our top stories, an update on the fatal KZN bus crash and Finance Minister to decide on National Dialogue budget. Good morning. The EFF has confirmed the bus that was involved in a fatal crash on the R34 was transporting members and supporters of the party back to Vryheid after attending a Youth Day rally in Durban. 12 people died while another 32 were injured, 12 of whom are in a serious condition. The bus was involved in a crash with a truck at midnight. The oncoming truck allegedly hit the bus along its side, ripping the bus open. EFF spokesperson Sinao Tambo says the party will be assisting families to identify their loved ones.
We can confirm that it was a bus carrying EFF members and supporters coming from the June 16 rally, which we had at Kingsway Team Stadium in Umlazi. So they were on their way back to Vryheid after the rally had concluded, and we're going to now be working on identification of the individuals involved so that we can reach out to the families and express our condolences. So before we issue any sort of statements, we want to ascertain those identities and speak to those family members.
Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will have the final say on the budget for the upcoming National Dialogue. Mashatile was speaking to the media at the Northwest University Rag Farm Stadium after delivering the Youth Day celebrations address yesterday. His comments come as the National Dialogue Committee has come under fire for its projected 770 million rand estimated cost for the dialogue.
The issue of the cost obviously will be looked upon by the Minister of Finance. And normally when there are activities like this, officials will start planning, will project the cost of accommodation, this and that. The Minister of Finance will finally decide whether funds are available in that regard, or we need to cut down. He will deal with that.
The High Court in Pretoria is today expected to hear an application by the Defence Counsel, Charles Mnisi, for the dental examination of accused number 3 in the Senzo Mehiwa trial, Mthobisi Ncube. This follows testimony at the High Court in Pretoria by Sergeant Moses Mabasa, who mentioned seeing a gold tooth on photographs downloaded from Ncube's phone memory card. Ncube and 4 others on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. Paul Magubane reports.
The state says an eyewitness statement mentions that one of the intruders that entered Kelly Kumando's home had a gold tooth the night Mehiwa was murdered. This led to the submission of selfies downloaded from Ncube's phone as evidence. State witness such